The day before the 2025 NFL draft. Look how I started with so much drama, so much high energy. John Lund is in the house. Larry Krueger, John Lund, the Krug Show meets John Lund Unleashed. Let's go. We're talking Niners draft 24 hours before the draft. What is going to happen? We discuss it next. Off and running Wednesday on the Krug Show. Happy April the 23rd. Draft is on the 24th. Yes, that's tomorrow. We got a lot to talk about. The 49ers with the 11th pick in maybe the most crucial draft in franchise history, definitely in recent history. John Lund in the house. There is nobody I'd rather talk Niner ball with than John Lund. Of course, the two of us have done Niner pre and post for many years. I don't know if I've ever counted it, but less than 10, more than 5.
Yeah, I think you and I started together in like 16, and so yeah, at least like 7-8 years. And
yeah,
we did it a long time, and then we did draft coverage with the 49ers right next to the draft room, which we'll be doing this year. And you and I did the national wrap of the NFL for a few years for ESPN Radio. At the end, we would do a post game show, and at 6:59 p.m. we'd have 1 minute to connect to ESPN. Their producers would send us a bunch of papers. Here's what we're going to do. We're like, whatever, just let's go. And then we would recap the whole NFL day. So
we went from a local show to a national show.
Yeah, we were NFL centric.
Live to live.
Yeah, it was very nice. So, yeah, we've gone through a lot of these. And I commend you first and foremost, because as much as I love and study the NFL draft, there is no one I know, and I'm not just saying this, there is no one I know who is as enthusiastic, who works harder, who digs deeper, who doesn't just say the first round, surface digging as most of us do. I might go deep into like the first, second, third round, something like that, but not you, man. You are all about, and that stuff's too easy for you. The first few rounds are too easy for you. First round, Pshaw. You dig deep, and you've always done it, and we've always laughed and said, okay, it's Krug time. I just remember because, like you said, we've done the first round together. That's easy. You and I have delved deep into the weekends and done live broadcasts for local radio stations on the Saturday and the Sunday, where we're on the 7th round, right? And the Niners are throwing us these guys in the air, and I'm like, Krug, who the hell is this guy? Yeah. And you're like, I got this. So there's nobody who knows it, studies it, digs on it, works harder on it, knows more about it than you, a former scout. And so I always love this time of year with you. I always love doing shows with you, but there's not a better time than 24 hours before the draft. And as you know well than anybody else, this is my favorite time too, today, because guys like Todd McShay, who talked to a lot of people, guys like Peter Schrager, who talked to a lot of people, all of a sudden, and this always blows my mind about this whole process, but guys are falling and rising, and it's not the teams. Here's who's giving out the information. It's the agents. So the agents are hearing certain things, because the teams, as we saw, you and I were there live yesterday sitting by each other when John Lynch spoke. He has become a master at saying something, but actually the Billy Bean school, the Bob Myers school of saying nothing whatsoever. So he didn't give us a lot yesterday, because that's what teams are trying to do. They're required to do this so they can throw the NFL media and fans a piece of red meat before the draft. But they try to say nothing whatsoever. And they've got about a 20-minute period before they get cut off. Like Corey Rush, their PR guy, is standing there with a stopwatch. And at about the 25-minute mark, he goes, last question, because he doesn't want to, they don't want to be there too long. So John Lynch is telling a story about how Floyd Peters hated him as a draft pick and wouldn't play him for 8 minutes. So that breaks up, like, now he's only got 17 minutes to cover and not tell us anything. So it's kind of what's going on. So what we're hearing today is agents kind of throwing things out there that, Walter Nolan's moving up and Mason Graham's moving back. And that's information that's good stuff. It's not Mel Kiper like trying to match players with teams with players. It's guys who have insight, who the day before the draft are going, hey, you know what? This is what I'm hearing. And so this is where it gets fun.
Yeah, no question. And we got a lot to get to. And there's so many interesting angles, and John knows this like the back of his hand. So this is the guy I wanted to have on the show today, and we're dual streaming on both channels. So Hit like and subscribe so I can sound like a YouTuber. Hit like and subscribe.
Do it.
Hit like and subscribe on both channels. If you could leave a comment in the chat. We're going to get to the chat. We got a bunch of people chatting away. I'll say it up front. I usually don't set any parameters on the chat, but let's all just try to get along. Let's not. Let's just all just try to get along. I mean,
I hate that guy. I hate you. I hate you.
I mean,
it's just the draft, man. It's just the draft.
I mean,
have fun with it.
Says they love a guard, it doesn't mean that you can go at their mother. You know what I mean?
I hate that guy.
When somebody says, I don't think the guy plays the run well, doesn't mean you need to stalk us.
Oh, that's funny.
Let's keep it in perspective.
Oh, that's
but
good.
There's a lot of passion. There's a lot of passion for
sure.
49er football.
People want their guy, right? They want their guy, and when their guy either gets taken or that's one thing I will say that John Lynch did tell us yesterday that I thought was really interesting was when they have this thing, and I hadn't heard this before. I know they do this in draft rooms, but I didn't know what they called it. And the Niners have this thing where it's stand on the table, right? And they each scout, like you've been, gets on the table and pounds the table for one or two or three guys that they really, really like, regardless of draft position. Could be a first rounder, could be a third rounder, could be a seventh rounder.
I wouldn't even want to be in the draft room. Just let me be in the room when
that would be this. How cool would that be? And that's what they do.
I would love to see the arguments.
Yeah.
And what they go to for defending their arguments and who each of them shouted out and why. And could I
That'd
see,
be fun.
Could I see if one guy was more credible than another just on the surface of how they displayed it?
See, when they talk about Hard Knocks and all those kind of things, and look, you wouldn't release this before the draft, and you might have to blur the guy's face out or whatever. But when because I know you're passionate about certain guys, and I think it would be so fun, as am I, and I think it would be so fun to get up on that table and say, "This is why I really like." And one of the other things John said yesterday, Lynch, they're trying to go consensus. Now, here's one thing that he did let out of the bag, that it's not that it can be used against the Niners, but he did say that when they went against consensus, because he kept saying consensus, we try to come to a consensus on a player, and you can't always do that. And there is one overall decision maker because it's in his contract, and that's Kyle Shanahan. So he did say that the times they've had trouble in their draft room is when they didn't come to a consensus and somebody played czar and said, this is who we're taking. Gee, I wonder who that guy could be, because I don't think it's John Lynch. I don't think John Lynch is the guy to say this is who we're taking, and I don't think that was Adam Peters in the past. They're like, Kyle Shanahan's the only one who has that power. And so I just kind of thought it was funny that John Lynch did say, without saying a name, that when they had trouble in the past with their draft, it had been when they didn't have consensus. And look, the West Coast, the Southern California, whatever.
What are you saying, John?
I'm saying it has to be that. It has to be Kyle.
Are you saying what he really meant to say is we do much better in the draft when we keep Kyle, in the lunch?
Well, I mean, right? That's how I took it. He said when we do consensus, we're fine. He says when we don't have consensus, and the only person who has the power to say this is who we're taking and everybody else shut up is Kyle Shanahan. John doesn't have that power. Kyle has it. Kyle has I have final say. And although I do think they come to consensus, I think that Kyle does have that power. So I do think he was saying that without saying it.
If this had just been like we're sitting around a golf course and not, Tim Kawakami is going to follow up and it's all and everybody's going to see this coast to coast and all that, I would have followed up with this. Did you have a consensus on Solomon Thomas?
Oh my God, I would have fallen out of my chair. That would have been amazing.
Because that's where this thing went off the rails.
Right.
When you passed on Mahomes for Solomon Thomas.
Yeah.
When you guys passed on Mahomes for Solomon Thomas, did you have a consensus on Solomon Thomas?
Well, let me give you
the ultimate question.
I'd love to ask that question on Trey Lance too. Wouldn't you love to ask the question on Trey Lance? Because to me, when it came to quarterbacks,
Kyle.
See, I think it is. That's what I mean, I guess. And that's what I think he was alluding to be honest, is that they didn't have consensus from what we understand on Trey Lance. And so because they didn't, and Kyle is basically, when it comes to the quarterback, it's Kyle's offense. Kyle wants a certain quarterback. Now, look, most of those quarterbacks sucked. I mean, outside of Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson didn't work. Trey didn't work. I don't think Justin Fields is anything. Obviously, Mac Jones is here now, so he didn't work as the 15th pick. So none of those guys really worked. I would like to know what the consensus was in that draft versus who they actually picked, but I don't know that it makes much difference because none of them, and Trevor Lawrence is good, not great, and they didn't have a shot at him anyway, but I wonder what the consensus was at 3 and what their thought process was in moving up from 12 to 3, if there was consensus in even doing that. Because I bet there was other guys going, hey, man, that's a lot to pay.
Well, let's go through it for a second. Let's go through the drafts real quick. 2017, okay? The offensive players, okay? Mm-hmm. So let's just say, who knows who's drafting who? Maybe Lynch is the GM, Kyle's the head coach. Kyle's, the guy making more money. He hired Lynch, but it doesn't mean that he's going to make every pick. He's got Lynch there. They also have scouting directors. They went defense to start it off. Solomon Thomas, Reuben Foster, Ahkello Witherspoon, and they went 0 for 3. But then they go 4 offensive players in a row, and they went 1 for 4. C.J. Beathard, Joe Williams, and by the way, they traded up for both.
I remember.
They traded up for C.J. Beathard, and they traded up in the 4th round for Joe Williams.
And Beathard was a Shanahan pick. That's well known.
Yeah.
Beathard was a Shanahan pick.
Joe Williams was too.
And, well,
I mean,
I've heard both on that. They did pound the table for that. I do know that they pounded the table for Joe Williams, which that's where I think the character thing comes in so much because they blew it on Foster and because they blew it on Joe Williams. I think character comes in a lot for the Niners, what kind of character you have and what kind of person. Because like standing there yesterday next to a guy like Christian McCaffrey, who I know they traded for, but like Fred Warner is so damn polished.
Yeah.
And so good and such a great leader that they take into consideration a lot of character now. I think with Reuben Foster, and it was early, and they've learned, and John has said this numerous times, what they've learned from that process, taking those risks on the Joe Williams and the Reuben Fosters and stuff. They don't do that much anymore. They may whiff on a guy, but it's not because, he's kind of a iffy guy that way. So they don't do much of that anymore.
Well, just to quickly go through it though, if you looked at their 2017 draft, mm-hmm. their offensive players were Beathard, Joe Williams, Kittle, Trent Taylor. Obviously, they hit on Kittle and they missed on the other 3. Mm-hmm. Dante Pettis, they traded up for in 2018. That was an offensive player. Obviously, that was a bust. They hit on Debo in 2019, but they also wanted Jalen Hurd, and they took him in the 3rd round, and that wound up being a bust offensively. They hit on Ayuk definitely in 2020.
Trade up.
But, as far as offense. And then offensively, Trey Lance, Aaron Banks, Trey Sermon to start the 21 draft, and they went 1 for 3 there. And yet they didn't sign Banks to the 2nd contract. I mean, he's got paid a ton somewhere else. But
by the way, that's my point of whether a pick is successful or not. Like Mike McGlinchey is not successful. He didn't sign a 2nd contract. The only 2 first-round picks that they've gotten to 2nd contracts are Brandon Ayuk, who they seem to regret, and Nick Bosa, who almost seemed like an obvious pick after Kyler Murray. So that, to me, that's the level of success. If you don't get to a 2nd contract, you weren't a success because that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to draft, develop, and re-sign.
Yeah. So Purdy, I guess, will be there eventually. Mm-hmm. But yeah, no, I think you're right. And then Elijah Mitchell didn't get to the 2nd contract, really, right? And then Jalen Moore obviously just left. So they've lost some of their players in free agency. Both those guys, by the way, went to Kansas City. So I mean, it's just, and then other offensive players, 22, Ty Davis Price, bust, Danny Gray, bust. Spencer Burford at this point has yet to establish himself. They did get Purdy late, but those are their
He missed the block
players.
in the Super Bowl. He's a bust.
Well, then 23. I mean, a 3rd round pick on Moody. What? And then Cam Latu in the 3rd round. What? That he's a total
Nobody
bust.
talks about that, but that's an awful pick. Just
Cam Latu.
He was so bad as a 3rd round pick that they essentially were going to cut him, but then they went, okay, let's redshirt him. And he can't be that bad. Because remember that preseason and in practice, he was dropping so many passes. And he's from Alabama, big-time school. And they're like, okay, well, we're just going to redshirt the guy. And so they did. Then he came back the next year, and he sucked just as bad. Then they had to release him. He never played for the 49ers, and that's a 3rd-round pick, man. That's brutal.
Yeah, total bust. I mean, I don't know what the issue was because he was a good athlete. He looked, ran routes. He had just terrible hands. And then this last year, I mean, we'll see about Pearsall and Garendo and Cowing. Those are the 3 offensive players in this last draft. It's a TBD situation. Things look good, but you never know. So I'm just saying, offensively, they haven't necessarily done an incredible job in the draft. But we don't want to harp on it too long, because I do want to get to the story of the day, which is that there's rumors that Mason Graham could fall to 11, and that the number one defensive tackle in this draft, the number one 3 technique up front in Mason Graham, could be there at 11. And yet that now I'm seeing lots of people, Niner fans online saying, you know what? I'd rather have Walter Nolan. I'd rather have Derek Harmon. I'd rather go with one of those guys. Here's where I am on this, John. And I see there's limitations here, but this guy is a really good football player. I mean, when I'm talking about this guy, I'm talking about Mason Graham from Michigan. He's got the wrestling background. He's near perfect on how to position himself, how to stay square to the line of scrimmage, how to find the football and make plays. This would be the gift of gifts if this guy falls down. In fact, I'm not up for a trade up, but if this guy fell to like 7, 8, and I thought I could move something minimal and jump over the team in front of me to get this guy, I think I would. I think this is a really, really good football player. He doesn't have the body. He's pudgy, short arms. He's not going to stand up against the two, against combo blocks incredibly well. He's not totally dominant, but he is a leverage monster, quick as a hiccup, smart as hell. One of the best college defensive tackles I've seen. I mean, literally across the board. He brings maximum effort. I think he would wind up being a huge playmaker. You still have to go get another war daddy and surround him with more. He can't do it all himself. He's not King Kong in shoulder pads, but what he is just the motor, the first and second down dominance. This is a really good football player. I love Walter Nolan, but if Mason Graham is there, and I love Kenneth Grant, and I would try to get Kenneth Grant if I could by trading up or getting him in round 2. But Mason Graham is so productive, so good. There's no way that if he falls to 11 that I'm not taking him.
Well, and this is why today is fun, because Peter Schrager, who's really dialed in around the league and just left NFL Network for ESPN, has his only mock draft. And along the way in his mock draft, if you haven't read it, what it is I talk to this team, I talk to this team. It's different than a Mel Kiper who says this team, this guy fits, whatever. It's what he's hearing. And then Todd McShay did the same thing on his. And both have Graham falling. McShay has Graham going to the Niners at 11. Schrager has Nolan to the Niners at 11 and Graham to the Dolphins at 13. This is a perfect example of why teams fail in the first round. It's the old Al Davis height, weight, speed. They get so enamored in the first round, and I don't know why the blinders change in the second round and they go back to the film and they watch football players, and all of a sudden you're having better drafted players. This is what the Niners do in the second and third round, because what happens is you fall in love with the sexiness of the speed, the weight, the height, the this, the that, and it's like, God, the guy was 6'5", 275 edge rusher, and he ran a 4.59. How could I screw that pickup? Because you didn't watch the film enough and you fell in love with the combine stuff. Teams do this in the first round, and they're taking these chances in the first round that they don't take in the second, third, fourth. They just draft good football players at that point. So that's where the screw up is. The process is so long that Mason Graham has been so scrutinized that they forgot what a great football player he is. This guy is not only a great football player and knows how to play the position, but also he's a culture setter. Everybody that you talk to loves Mason Graham. He's the type of team that, like Carolina, for example, at 8, who needs a culture changer, needs that guy. And they're so stupid that they're going to go out and get, Mikael Williams or something like that from Georgia and take a big risk on high upside when the guy's going to probably get, 5 sacks and be out of the league in 5 years. If the Niners could get Mason Graham, because he's not the sexiest, and I don't know why. And I like Walter Nolan, but there's questions about Walter Nolan's character. There's questions about his motor. Maybe, you know what? He's an high upside guy, and he might turn out to be great. But if I'm the Niners, I'm trying to rebuild this defense. And you and I talked to Fred Warner yesterday, and one side of him is really excited to redo this with Robert Saleh, but the other side is he acknowledges that they have a lot of work to do. Mason Graham would be amazing in the middle of that defense. to keep what they need, to keep the big offensive linemen and guards off of Fred Warner. It would be a massive get for the 49ers. And I feel the same way you did. And I said this a few days ago before even this stuff came out. I said, you watch, he's going to drop. He's a white guy, not overly athletic, not overly sexy. The owner doesn't jump up and down. He's kind of like taking an offensive guard in on the other side of the ball. But man, he's going to be a Pro Bowler for 10 years, and he's going to be a culture setter. And so when Warner's gone and Bosa's gone and all these guys, this guy is going to anchor your defense. He's that good. But this happens every year in the first round. These GMs fall in love with the sexiness and the numbers and the athletic ability, and they overlook a guy like Mason Graham, who then falls at number 11, and people go, how the hell did they get this guy? Because he's a football player, and he knows how to play.
Look at the film,
look at this stuff. I mean, God.
This guy,
he's just a great football player.
Okay, here's one.
Look at him, look at him right there. I mean, just come on.
One of the things you got to remember is he plays the game a lot on his feet, and he's why? Because he's got that wrestling background. He just went to the ground there. He's got that wrestling background, and he's a great leverage player. He also stays square.
See, they kind of double him on that play, and like you said, you nailed it. He just stays square on a double team. And if part of the play of a defensive tackle is you just don't get uprooted out of there, and he doesn't. And see how he works? He's always working and working and working. See his handwork right there in that play that he just made? He's got great hands. He's stout. I mean, he's just a football player, and teams forget, man. They get so in love with the stopwatches and all these different things. I don't know how you could watch this film and play after play after play and not fall in love with this guy. And like I said, Jacksonville is a team that needs a culture set. Carolina, a culture set. Like, this is the kind of player you need in the middle of your defense. And we're hearing it from reliable sources that this guy's going to fall. And I agree with you. Not only would I take him at 11, Bears at 10, Saints at 9. If he gets into my range, I'm going to go get this guy because we know this. We've seen this. I'd love him to get an offensive lineman, but if this guy was available, I wouldn't care. You need an edge guy and 2 defensive tackles out of this draft, honestly. And this guy would alleviate so many concerns, because then what you could do is you take Mason Graham, and then you can wait, or you could put Givens, or you could put Elliott or something by him, and you'll be okay. This guy's that good. If you take another one of the defensive linemen, and I'm not saying, Kenneth Grant's really nice and Nolan's nice. Harmon, I'm not as high on. I mean, there's a lot of guys in this draft that are really good, but you could take this guy, and then you could wait till the, 5th round and take like a Robinson, the kid out of Nebraska or something. I mean, Graham is that good that he's going to make the interior defensive line and your entire defensive line that much better.
Yeah, no, he's a monster, man. He's also, he's so productive. He's a very, very productive football player, and he's the wrestling background. I know he's got short arms, but watch the tape. I mean, does it burn him? It doesn't, so to me, he would be the guy. He would be absolutely the guy. The quickness now, now there are people, I mean, we're going to get to his negatives here for a second, because there are negatives, and it's not like everybody's got negatives. And it's not like there's no negatives on him. There are negatives. But the question is, what kind of football player is this guy? And I think he's incredibly productive. Grant has more plays where he took plays off. There he is, 78 next to him.
I love him too, but you're right.
I love Grant.
Graham is relentless. Graham is the thing I would say is he's a lot like Bosa, not in the style that they play, but they're both relentless, and that's a great trait. That is a great. Saleh would love him, and I bet we were just talking about scouts pounding the table. Saleh, and that's another thing that John Lynch said. Saleh is very involved in this process. Having been the head coach of the Jets, he's more involved in this process this time, and he's going to want, because they're rebuilding this defense, there are going to be certain players he's going to want as benchmark players. I can guarantee you he's pounding the table for a guy like this.
Yeah. No, I mean, the one thing about Graham too is that you're talking about a guy who I think could probably step in day one and be one of your best defensive players. And if you're drafting up in the top 12, man, you really got to have a player who's one of your best defensive players, right? You can't, you got to get somebody big time out of this pick. They can't miss. That's the other thing too. I mean,
That's
I
a
love
great point.
I'm a Shamar Stewart fan. I'm an A&M
Mhm.
fan, and I like Shamar Stewart.
Mhm.
It's going to be interesting. It's like if the reports are true that the Niners really like Shamar Stewart, then it makes you wonder if they would if the same people that like Shamar Stewart would like Mason Graham. In some ways, they're the exact opposite. Stewart doesn't have the incredible production, but he has the pro body. He's 285 and he's fast and he's explosive.
I guess it
And he led
depends.
them in pressures. So
Yeah,
he
see,
does have
that's
some
I was just going
production.
to say that. Like you've talked about Stewart a lot, and for those who don't know, he's a kid out of Texas A&M. He's 6'5". He is chiseled right out of the handbook of what you want an edge rusher to look like. He's 6'5", 270. He has the measurables of like a Myles Garrett. He ran a 4.59 40. All the athleticism in the world, but over the last 3 seasons, he has 3 sacks a year, which isn't productive unless you determine what production is. Because as you said, he had 33 quarterback hurries. So some teams will think, well, I've got a great defensive line coach like Chris Kusarik, and that extra half step that he constantly missed with, I'm going to get that out of him. So there are teams like that because you know what? Maybe he turns into that. But I think you said this yesterday. I mean, you and I were just sitting around bullshitting between waiting for players to come out after John Lynch had spoken. And so you and I were hanging out talking. And, it just kind of depends on things. But you said one thing to me that stuck, which was they can't miss, as you just said there. And you were telling me that saying that yesterday. When you are relying this much on the draft, and John Lynch has said they are, and you have 11 picks, and you are this desolate, and I think that's the word for this defense, they are desolate. They need 3 defensive linemen. They need a linebacker. They need a corner. I think they need a deep safety. I'm not a Jair Brown guy. You have got to hit. I mean, I'm not saying you can't take some risks on some picks, but what you're doing, what people have to understand is offensively, they're going to be fine. If CMC's healthy, and he said he was yesterday, and Kittle's going to come in, they'll be fine, and they'll hit the offensive line, and Brock's going to re-sign, and they're going to score points. But Fred Warner said this to us yesterday. They're rebuilding this defense. I mean, Drake Greenlaw's gone. Their defensive line is pretty much out of Bosa gone. They have 2 guys in their front 7. Pro Football Focus had as above average grade, and that was Warner and Bosa. Everybody else, no, not even close. So they've got to rebuild the front 7. And to do that, it's not only do you want to build it, but you're building with a certain player. And that's where Graham comes in. That's where character comes in. That's where you're rebuilding this thing completely. And it's not going to be easy. And so in certain years, let's say that they're stacked like they're normally stacked, right? And they maybe even your first round pick couldn't be a starter on this team. They've been in that position before, picking late in the first round. You could take a risk on a guy and say, if this guy hits, fine. If he doesn't, no big deal. We're stacked. But this year, that's not like that.
Oh, I know. You gotta hit. You gotta hit.
They gotta hit.
And you know what and that's another thing. It's like I did a bunch of mocks. One of the mocks we did along the way was only go with picks that you think are super, super safe. Okay. Like let's go the super safe mock. So nobody with some high upside that hasn't done it before that tested awesome. It has to be somebody who's got like total production across the board. You know what I mean? Somebody who's really safe. And it's interesting, the different kinds of players you see. I want to share the screen because I think this might be interesting here. Steph Sanchez, I had on the show the other day. She's got a 42-second clip on here about Shamar Stewart from her stream. I'm going to put this up and we'll play with this. I think she's got Josh Norris here. Yeah, she's got Josh Norris here. Let's listen to this real quick. This is 42 seconds on Shamar Stewart. I think there's an interesting revelation in this little soundbite.
Chris Kusarik, their defensive line coach, through the grapevine, and now this can be hit or miss, but this is just what I've heard. A massive fan of Shamar Stewart, appreciates the traits, appreciates the upside, thinks he can work with the tools that are there to turn him into a finisher. Heck, that might even be ahead of someone like Michael Williams. I know Walter Nolan's name has been mentioned by Albert Breer and others as a possibility here as an interior rusher. But Dago, I think I might be leaning so we can get a real shakeup. And I understand that people hate when mock drafts become unpredictable. I'm going to lean Shamar Stewart here to give the 49ers. Chris Coast.
Very interesting. What do you think?
That doesn't surprise me though.
Because Josh Norris, by the way, you know Josh, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It doesn't surprise me because a lot of coaches, they have confidence in themselves, and Kusarik does too. And he would think to himself, look, I can develop him And he's done that. I mean, guys like Arden Key have come here, and, Charles Omenihu, who was okay with Houston, all of a sudden he's great with the 49ers. I mean, he has a history of being able to get the most out of guys. There's no question. It goes back to something John Lynch said to us yesterday, though, when we were down there at 49ers HQ, which is consensus. So does everybody want to take that risk? Does John Lynch want to take that risk? Does Kyle want to take that risk? Do the scouts want to take that risk? Like, how many ever people are in that room? And if John is reiterating consensus, it doesn't surprise me that a position coach wants to play with a piece of clay that has all the upside that Shamar Stewart has. But how risk adverse is John Lynch when it comes to a player like that versus a Mason Graham versus a Walter Nolan? And again,
the big question also is how much credibility does Chris's opinion?
Right.
Let's just say this. Let's take that at face value. Let's say this guy's contact is totally right. The guy's absolutely spot on. Norris has got a guy who knows he's right. Chris loves Shamar Stewart. How much weight does that carry with John Lynch? Now, Chris did tell them last year, I want Evan Anderson after the draft, and had them invest almost $400,000 guaranteed money for an undrafted free agent. And he hit, because Evan Anderson is a very good NFL player in the present. And I think he's going to be someday somebody's going to pay him a lot of money. He's a good player. That was a great pickup. So the question is, is he hot with them right now? Do they feel like he's got, it'll be interesting to see, because maybe that alone would give him some significant sway. And maybe if Saleh also feels the same way and they're united on that front, you may see Shamar Stewart. But when it's interesting, if I was going to a presser, the one thing I would say is if I knew John, I'm just thinking to myself, psychological, if I'm John Lynch, I'm going to a presser, I know it's an exercise. I'm not supposed to tell the media anything. Right. But I got to say something.
It's a skill, though. He is good at it now.
I want to tell the media nothing. But I would definitely want to say, if I knew I was going Shamar Stewart at 11, I definitely would want to say something that was consistent with, what he is as what I like. You know what I mean? Otherwise, it's like, well, wait a second. Yesterday, last week, John, you said you like short, fat guys, and you went for a tall, skinny guy. What? Yeah. Well, what did he say? He said, what do you like in a defensive end, John? I like guys who set the edge and pressure the quarterback. That's what he said. What does Shamar Stewart do really well? Set the edge at that weight, at that strength. He's the best at it. And that's what he does best, I should say. And pressure the quarterback, and he led A&M in pressures. And if Chris in the SEC, if Chris, is hot to trot on him, and that right there, that could be it. It could be Shamar Stewart at 11. I'm not even 100% sure Shamar Stewart makes it to 11, but there's a lot of Niner fans who are very, very nervous about this. But the question is this: if you like Shamar Stewart, do you also like Mason Graham, or do you look at Mason Graham and say, short arms, college player, played next to Grant, like him, don't love him,
they're just so different. They're just really different. And look, I could see him taking Stewart. I could see Stewart not being there too. I could see a team like Jacksonville, who a lot of times at 5 is such a wild card, or Carolina, who is a bit of a wild card. Like, I could see those teams possibly taking him before, just because they cannot resist these things. But like I said, that's why teams fail in the first round. He's got production if you think production is hurries. He doesn't have sacks. Now, can you change those things? Yeah. Again, there have been guys who come into the league who aren't big sack guys who get coached by the right guys. It does not surprise me that Kacirik says that. It's just they've got to be united on the same front. And I really think you have you bring up a great point, because even though we didn't ask John Lynch this, and I guess if I had to do it over again, I would, and he would give us a generic answer that wouldn't tell us anything, because it's lying season. And he's become very good at saying something but saying nothing at all. But do you have to change your draft philosophy a little bit, in that if you're picking at 31 and you're stacked, you can take a risk on a guy. If you're picking an 11 and you better hit because you don't have anything on your defensive line right now, you better hit that guy. So do you have to hit a double rather than try to swing for the fences? because Stewart is swinging for the fences. Graham, to me, is, by the way, I think Graham's a home run pick, but he's at least a double. And so do you have that mentality, or do you draft one way all the time, no matter what? Or do you adjust things to, hey, I need a starter badly?
I listen to myself. I mean, I'm biased because I've sat on the road with some of these guys, and I really believe in the wisdom of the guy who was in the stadium on the rainy day that the player actually played the game, as opposed and lived it and met, and was there and talked to people. So I always will lean with the scouts. But I'll say this, I'm also a huge believer in analytic data tied to the draft being absolutely a way to kind of almost moneyball it, to see through the minutia and get right to the players. I want guys who make tackles. You know what I mean? I want guys, whatever it is, and you can squeeze any variable in any formula you want and come up with something. But to me, when you wed the tape and the analytics, you're the best drafting team in football. So I think it's wise to listen to the analytics. And when I heard John say we like to build consensus, I think that's great. But it also, you got to leave room for Chris is coaching him,
right?
And he met him, and there's a connection there. And Chris thinks he can do this. And do we believe in Chris, or are we going to tell Chris, piss off? We're going to go draft somebody else, and you're going to take the guy we get you in the 3rd or 5th round. And then maybe Chris is like, not as fired up. There's dynamics at play here, but I would just say, take the best player, take a productive player. But it's interesting because some teams look at college production and say, Dane Brugler said it the other day. We had him on. He said, hey, look, the NFL draft and what the teams are looking for are traits. They're not necessarily looking for production because it's a different game that they're projecting these guys into. So if you're looking for traits, Shamar Stewart. If you're looking for production, Mason Graham.
Well, I'll give you a great example, because I've always been a big believer in, well, if you didn't do it at the college level, how the hell are you going to do it at the NFL level? But I'll give you one of the biggest.
Daniil Hunter.
Yeah, he's a big one. But I was covering a game for ESPN Radio. It was Utah versus Wyoming, of all places, and they shipped me off to Laramie to do sidelines. And it is the wind.
You were there.
Yeah, and the wind is whipping like you can't even believe.
Yeah,
it's 50-mile-an-hour winds. I had to go up at halftime and just go, because it was unbelievable. And it's icy winds. It's freezing. And Josh Allen's the quarterback for Wyoming. So if I had never gone up there, he's completing like 47% of his passes. And I'm like, how the hell could an NFL team think to themselves, Josh Allen is our guy? But you don't realize that he played half his games in Laramie, Wyoming. Dude, I was screwing around on the sidelines. I threw a ball, and it comes flying back at me. It was just the most ridiculous weather I'd ever seen in my life. So I thought to myself, before I saw Josh Allen up there, I looked at his numbers, and I studied for the game, and I went, how could people be thinking this guy could be a first-round pick? And then I went to the conditions, and I saw how he played, and he still tried to drive the ball down the field, and he had terrible receivers, and he had a bad offensive line. And so, teams went up there, and they took that into consideration. They take him in the draft. And I understood why Buffalo took him when they did. A lot of the draft analysts who had, of course, never been to Laramie, Wyoming, and seen the brown and yellow, the fecal matter and urination colors of Wyoming in that War Memorial Stadium and that weather, they didn't realize it. And so I thought, if I had just looked at Josh Allen's numbers, I'd have thought to myself, he can't play in the league. He never did it against bad competition in the WAC, let alone doing it at the NFL level. But I understood Buffalo. What kind of weather do you have? You have that kind of weather in Buffalo, and worse with the snow and the things. And they said, you see this arm, he has experience throwing in it. We'll let him go slow. And it did. It took him a minute to kind of ramp it back up. And now we know what Josh Allen is. So from that point forward, I went, okay, I still believe in production in college. And I do believe the majority of players have to have some production, or it might be tough in the NFL. But you have to look at every situation. And that's why the scouts are the scouts. Because I went there once and went, oh, I get it. Whereas scouts probably went there again and again and again in a place like Buffalo, where the weather is such a factor. They went, this guy can cut through it because he's done it. And so all of a sudden, Josh Allen's great. Now, did I think Josh Allen was going to be that great? No. Because the day that they played Utah, they actually got beat, and he was just okay. But between the weather and the players that he was playing with, I was like, he has garbage to play with. So I understood it when he got picked. I went, okay, this guy has a chance, even though in college his numbers weren't overly impressive.
Yeah. And you know, from being there too, by the way, because I bet Wyoming quite a bit at home. That's a great home field. That
it is because everybody goes up there. It's the middle of nowhere. Yeah. You have to go to an airport and drive a ton over there. It's just a brutal place. And to have, you know, and they don't have a lot of weapons around them. I mean, obviously they don't. And so, you know, you just have to take all those things into consideration, because when you just look at something and you look at numbers or whatever, what somebody says, unless sometimes you understand the situation. So again, I don't know what Shamar's situation is, but it also depends, like you said, what do you consider production? Because you know this as well as anybody else. I'll give you a perfect example. Leonard Floyd had 8.5 sacks last year. Not bad. He played over 600 snaps. The other 600 snaps, I can tell you, I didn't watch every single one, but I watched a lot. He was shit. He was garbage. He couldn't set an edge. He's 240 pounds. Like, so it,
and yet,
Nick
Bosa
the numbers
had a ton of pressures last year, but he didn't have a lot of sacks.
So if you think Shamar Stewart, if you're Chris Kasarik, and I understand why, he says, well, I'd rather look at the 33 pressures rather than the 3 sacks and say, okay, how can I get him that extra half step? Or how can I get him to understand that you're reaching and trying to knock the ball out at that point? So he was in a position to make plays. He didn't finish the play. Well, Chris Kasarik is saying to himself, again, according to what you ran there, Josh Norris was saying, like, hey, you know what? I'm a great coach, and I'll get him that extra half step to make the play. That's probably what Kasarik is saying here, because 33 pressures, that's production, but we all get enamored with sacks. And I'm saying Leonard Floyd had 8.5 sacks. That's not bad, but he was trash on the other 600 plays that he played, and that's why he's not here anymore.
You know, it's like I had a guy on from the Draft Network the other day, Josh, not Josh, I'm losing my Ryan Fowler. Mm-hmm. And Ryan Fowler was there in Mobile, and he's like, you know, I talked to him after the show. He's like, man, to be on the field and watch Shamar Stewart dominate in Mobile, it was something to behold. Now, this guy went there. He played on Monday at practice and Tuesday at practice and dominated at such a level that he shut it down the rest of the week. So you're not shutting it down if there's all these, you know, people with all these concerns. You shut it down when they say, you know what, bro, you're going top half of the first round for sure. And that's probably what someone said to his agent. So for him to go potentially at 11 is not shocking to me. And to hear Josh Norris say that, you know, because the question is, can Chris coach him up? Chris is the guy who's got to do it. If Chris really likes him, that's the key. And to hear that makes me think they're going Shamar. Now, I thought Lynch also gave away a little bit of what their indications might be on day 2. But let's hit that in just a second. We started off talking ball right out of the chute. We never got into our sponsors. So we are, of course, as we always are, brought to you by Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in all of Northern California. Check them out. They're in Emeryville. They're in Corte Madera. They're open 7 days a week from 11 a.m. till 8 p.m. Go say hi to Damon and Mary. Get some brisket chili. Tell them the Krug sent you. We're also brought to you, as you can see on the bottom of the screen, by our 2 sponsors on the bottom there, which is Claw Daddy Arcades. A big fan of Claw Daddy Arcades. He's a great follow on Instagram at Claw_Daddy_Arcades. And you can find a Claw Daddy Arcade here in Northern California. He's got 3 down in the Southland. He's also got Fresno, Modesto, and he's got a brand new location opening in the Bay Area. So follow him on Instagram at Claw_Daddy_Arcades. Thanks to him for being a proud sponsor of the Krug Show. And also thanks to our friends at LearnKey Upskill Academy. The show is sponsored by LearnKey Upskill Academy, which is an online learning platform designed to get you job ready in 6 months or less. So it doesn't matter what field you're interested in. It could be cybersecurity, could be marketing. They offer over 30 certification programs to help you take that next step in your professional career. And they've got flexible online learning and industry-recognized certifications. You can build the skills employers are looking for, all with support of a U.S.-based student assistant program. So don't wait to invest in your future. Click the link in the description of this show and visit upskill.learnkey.com and connect today. And, of course, we have our NFL draft contest. Who goes in the top 12, if you can match the most, there's a link in the description. The winner gets a $100 Visa gift card. Second place gets a $50 Visa gift card. If you can pick 1 through 12 in order in the draft And whoever gets the most right is going to be the winner, and they get to come on the draft show next weekend. So looking forward to that. Thanks to LearnKey Upskill Academy for sponsoring the Krug Show and our NFL Draft Challenge. And we went through it, and I'll tell you the one thing, John, that I'm thinking is going to be the big bombshell on draft day. I believe that the Pittsburgh Steelers, who normally are very conservative under Kevin Colbert, now Omar Khan, they have DK Metcalf. They have George Pickens. They have a nightmare on their hands if they don't get themselves a decent quarterback, is what they have. They've invested a ton of money in two guys who are absolutely going south on them if they don't put a decent quarterback on the field. And if people don't understand that's the reality, that is the reality. Pickens is already iffy, and DK just got there and has played, wants to play with a good quarterback. Pittsburgh needs a quarterback. I think Pittsburgh's willing to trade next year's number one. I think Tomlin really wants Shador. I think Tomlin right around where the Niners are, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, somewhere in that range. I think the Steelers are going to try to come up from 21, offering next year's one to do so. And the Niners might be sitting right there if Shador falls in their lap as the team, because Dallas, a lot of people think they're going to part ways with Dak Prescott potentially in a monster deal, and they could be looking quarterback. So I think it's kind of a volatile area for quarterbacks. If Pittsburgh calls the morning of the draft, not on the clock, before the draft, and offers you 21, next year's one for 11, do you bypass Mason Graham, Shamar Stewart, and all that and just say, you know what, let's take the one and move back to 21, and we'll start our draft with 2 number ones in 26? But we won't have that top dozen pick. We'll be more in the area we've always been in the 20s. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't think there's any question. And John Lynch said this yesterday. He said one of the things he said was the thing he loves about the draft this year is the depth of the draft. He said that there were 20 first-round pick grades for him this year, or for the 49ers this year. In 2024, there were 23 first-round grades, is what John Lynch said. So they'd be on the verge of, because he said there's 20, so they'd be around the verge of running out of first-round grades, but there'd probably still be one on the board that they could like. And different than other years where the Niners were picking near the end, they didn't have openings, but they do. They do at edge. They do at defensive tackle. They do at offensive tackle. They do at offensive guard. They might at center. They do it linebacker. They do it at deep safety, where I like a guy like Malachi Starks or somebody like that. I really like the kid out of South Carolina. He was more of a box safety, so maybe he doesn't fit because you've already got one of those on your roster right now. But they're in that range. But yeah, you're going to be next year's number one, and I get 10 picks back. The Niners would do that in a heartbeat, because where John Lynch was not trying to tell us anything, but I don't think this hurt. I don't think that he's giving out any information that's inaccurate. It's not a top-heavy draft. It's a deep draft. And so, like you said, if you go back 10 spots, that may not be that different in the 49ers' eyes. They still feel like they can get a first-round pick because they had 20 first-round grades. They're sitting at 21. And then they get a number one next year, and they double that up. So, yeah, I think so. I think that he would be absolutely into that, because you get a first-round pick from somebody. Now, is Shador Sanders worth that to Pittsburgh? I don't know, but I think you brought up a good point. George Pickens a major pain in the ass, and it would not surprise me in the slightest if he was traded from Pittsburgh during this draft. DK would get frustrated at times when he wasn't getting the ball, and I don't disagree with him. I think DK Metcalf is a real talent, and at times he could dominate, and he wasn't getting the football, and you could see him on the sidelines a lot of times getting frustrated that he wasn't getting the football. So I could see that. And I don't see Aaron Rodgers as a fit in Pittsburgh, man. I worked in Pittsburgh.
No.
And it's just he's not a Pittsburgh guy. It doesn't feel like Pittsburgh. They're not, Mike Tomlin, as you said, their whole front office, they're all about continuity and wanting to be in Pittsburgh and wanting to be a Steeler and all that. Aaron Rodgers is kind of a hired gun for a year. And that just wouldn't, I just don't see that as a fit. And they're not fooling anybody saying, oh, we're fine with Mason Rudolph. No, you're not. He's a backup, and he might be a third stringer. He's not even a good backup. So he's not going to be their quarterback. So they've got to figure something out. And you're right. If they could get, I don't think it's gone from, he was going to go 2 to Cleveland, maybe 9 to the Saints. And now it doesn't look like he's going to go in either of those places. So he could be there at the 11 pick. And I could see that to move back 10 spots when you just said to us yesterday that it's a deep draft and you could pick up a 1 from Pittsburgh. I think they do that in a heartbeat.
Yeah. This is interesting too. I think this is what Lynch said yesterday when I asked him about Purdy. He was talking up Purdy, and I jumped in with, "Well, Purdy's your guy." Purdy's been talking up Jalen Noel, like really talking up Jalen Noel, and I was wanting to see if Lynch, if he, if he had heard of it or what he thought of Brock weighing in. I mean, Brock is their guy. They have no idea. They just got, they want to sign Brock, but you just dumped Debo, and he's not going to have Ayuk, and it's like, hey, if I'm Brock, if I'm his agent, I'm like, it's awesome that we're going shooting. Can we bring some bullets? Can I get some bullets for my gun? And here's what I asked Lynch yesterday. Listen to this.
John, he is your starting quarterback, and some players have insight and personnel, some don't. Does a guy like Brock want to take a look at some tight ends or some receivers? Does he have opinions about these guys?
Usually about year 6 or 7. He's not yet, but I think Brock, he does have opinions. That generally comes more with he and Kyle when they're probably on the pro players. He hasn't got into the college stuff. I know he's very high on Iowa State guys. There's a few good ones this year. They do a great job. What a program! I mean, they just find a bunch of 3 stars. They don't really go after Matt Campbell and those guys do a tremendous job. So, you know what you're getting when you get an Iowa State player. Brock has shown us that. There's some other guys in this draft that kind of are representative of that.
I think they're going Jalen Noel on day 2. Now, a lot of people think the 49ers are going Alec Ayamanor from Stanford, who is a big receiver, could block. He says he loves to block. They treated him almost like he was on the team at the local pro day. It was weird. Lynch talked to him for like 20 minutes, and then the wide receiver coach talked to him for 20 minutes. But I think he's probably a round 3 guy. And I know people would say, well, you can't take a receiver in round 2. If you're going to take a receiver on day 2, I would say I'm listening to my quarterback. And based on what I've seen, if it comes down to Jalen Noel or Alec Ayamanor or Ayamanor or whatever, I'm not sure how you pronounce it, I'm taking Jalen Noel all day, every day. Kenneth Grant had 26 reps of 225 pounds, the big defensive tackle that's hulking and huge. Jalen Noel had 23 reps of 225. He's enormously strong, so don't let the 5'10", 195 fool you. And he ran 4.39. He scored 8 touchdowns this year, operating mostly out of the slot. Without Ayuk and without Debo, you're going to need a dynamic down the field threat. Purdy had this quote the other day, was like, this is the kind of receiver that, you need to be great and this and that. He's talking him up, and he the other kid there is incredible too. Who's a bigger receiver, but I think
he's like 6'4", 215.
Yeah, and I think he's good too.
He's a 4.5 guy. Yeah, he's a 4.5 guy, or high 4.4s.
And he's good too. I like him. Him. He's smooth. He's big. But Jalen Noel is, I think, a great player. And if I'm on day 2 of the draft and I'm going to take a 5'10", 195-pound receiver, he sure as hell better be great. And this kid is great. And I don't know. We'll see. I know the second round is probably too high, but if you could, to me, trading back is probably the ticket to getting a guy like Jalen Noel. If you could trade back into the 20s, I don't know, Pittsburgh, let's see what teams want to trade up, or Denver maybe. If they could trade back and get that extra pick, I think you could afford to go with a receiver on day 2. If not, you probably got to stick in the trenches.
Yeah, it's just, and John talked about this yesterday, it is going to be hard to trade back because what drives trades in the first round of an NFL draft is quality quarterbacks. And they just don't have those. And so Cam Ward, who I still question at being the number 1 overall pick, but that's fine. Like if I'm Tennessee and I have so many needs to fill, I'm either taking Hunter or Carter. But okay, you're Tennessee, you can do whatever you want. I don't think that there's a top 10 quarterback on the board. I think that there's more value in the mid-round quarterbacks in this draft, but they're going to do what they're going to do. So it's hard to do that unless there's a big time slider, and Graham could be that slider. There's a number of guys who could do that depending on what your needs are. So you could see that. It's just you're not going to see a major, a big time jump unless, like you said, if Pittsburgh loves Shedeur Sanders and wants to be, and I think this is as important, wants to be in the Shedeur Sanders business, which I don't want to be. if I'm an NFL team, character matters and all these different things. A kid driving around a Rolls Royce Ghost because he got a bunch of NIL money at Colorado, that doesn't really make me happy if I'm an NFL team. Being the Little League coach's son, which is the way he acted, there was lots of things. I don't want to be in the Shedeur Sanders business, but if the Steelers do, moving up 10 picks is the only way that you can get that kind of a move and get a first round pick possibly from Pittsburgh. You mentioned this and you're right. They're normally a conservative organization. So I don't know if they would do that. If he was there at 16 or 17, maybe they'd make that kind of a jump. But like you said, 10 spots in the first round of the NFL draft is going to cost you your first round pick next year. So I don't know if Pittsburgh's comfortable doing that, but you brought up a good point. If you're going to keep Pickens around, who's a major pain, and if you're going to take DK Metcalf, who's going to demand the football, you better get someone to throw the football. And I don't know that I think Aaron Rodgers might just retire and then go to Pittsburgh. I just think that's a bad fit. I think it's a bad fit with with Tomlin. I think it's a bad fit with the organization, but I could be 100% wrong and they could sign him. But I could see them getting Sanders. I just don't know if they would come up to 10 picks. That would be out of character for Pittsburgh, but they might if they're that desperate.
And who knows? Maybe that would be the kind of move that would make that would make the 49ers willing to trade back if you're willing to give up your number one. One of the things that Matt Mayoko agreed with me on the other day was when I asked him if do you think the Niners may use some of these, maybe trade back in from a couple different picks, different points in the draft, try to get some extra, late.
I think that's more likely.
And then trade some of those day 3 picks for veteran players. And he said, you know what? He's heard quite a few rumors about the 49ers doing exactly that, going all the way back to the combine. So I've got a list here of veterans that they say could be traded on draft night. And it's a pretty good little list. I mean, I got to be honest, this is a better list than I thought. So I'll throw you these names. This is according to Adam Schefter. He listed as the players that we talked about here potentially tradable in a draft tidbits article. Okay, so these are players on rookie contracts who are considered deemed maybe expendable. Will Levis, Titans quarterback. Treylon Burks, former Arkansas receiver with Tennessee. Kayvon Thibodeau, edge rusher for the Giants.
Let's stop there for a second. Okay. Let's stop at Thibodeau for a second because the reason why he's going to be available is I think the first 4 picks are set. Yeah, I think the first 4 picks are set. Cam Ward's going to Tennessee. Travis Hunter's going to the Browns. The Giants are going to take Abdul Carter, which they've already got Brian Burns. So now you got 3 edge rushers. One's going to go, and Thibodeau is the one that seems to be because, like you said, he's going to be 1 more year and he's due a contract. And then the 4th pick, it sounds like Mike Vrabel loves Will Campbell, the offensive tackle out of LSU. So that seems to be the first 4 picks. So that makes Thibodeau expendable. And to me, this is what I mean about the 49ers. You're not getting 6 or 7 starters that are rookies. You don't even want that. And so with the 11 picks that they have, I do believe that one of these guys that you're going to mention here are going to be for a 49er because you got to get at least something. And I understand that Thibodeau would be up for a contract extension, but I'd worry about that later. Give me Thibodeau across from Nick Bosa, and he is kind of a Shamar Stewart when he is motivated. Last year, I think he had 5.5 sacks, but the year before he had 11.5. And people remember him as an Oregon freshman. He dominated the Rose Bowl. This guy, he has the talent. It's not that a question of that. He's kind of a weird dude. He's a bit of a character issue, those kind of things. Now, maybe the Niners want nothing to do with that. But in terms of overall talent, if you're Chris Kucera, you want to get your hands on Shamar Stewart, well, you can get your hands on Kayvon Thibodeau, and he's really talented. And then you don't have to pay him for a year. So, look, maybe you don't want to take that risk because at some point you're going to have to pay this guy. Get it. But there you go. There's a guy right now that there is no question whatsoever. If you want to say, give up, I don't know, 3rd or 4th round pick for Thibodeau, he's a starter opposite Nick Bosa. And now you don't have to worry about that position. And now if you take Mason Graham, who falls to 11, and Thibodeau, you cost you a 3rd round pick, your line's almost done. In fact, it probably is. Like you can put Jordan Elliott or Kevin Givens. I don't care who you put in there now. You have Mason Graham, Nick Bosa, and Kayvon Thibodeau. You just fixed your defensive line. That ain't bad.
I mean, there are other edge options we'll get to on this list. But yeah, I mean, he's intriguing. He's intriguing.
Yeah, I like him. And they're going to trade him. They're going to trade him because they're going to take Abdul Carter.
And they're not going to trade Brian Burns because they just added Brian Burns.
Right.
Okay. How about Evan Neal from the Giants, the offensive lineman?
Yeah, he's interesting, man. That was the year that Seattle took Cross. There was 3 offensive tackles taken in the first round that year, and the Giants took Neal, and he was kind of a disappointment. And the same kind of thing kind of applies here. You could get him for cheap. You get a quick year to look at him. You need offensive linemen. As much as I'd love the 49ers to take one at 11 if Membu or I don't think Campbell's going to fall, but if, like, say, Membu does, I'm not a Kelvin Banks guy. I want him to take one. He plays right tackle, then he plays left tackle, and you could put McKivitz at left guard, whatever. It just doesn't sound like they're going to go that way. And that's the character for the 49ers because what have we heard a ton of times, and you know this, Chris Forster, their offensive line coach, doesn't believe in the Niners as a philosophy, don't believe in going early with offensive linemen. So it doesn't seem like they're going to do that. So Neal has been a disappointment for the Giants, there's no doubt, but he was a top 10 pick a few years ago out of Alabama, and he's a massive dude. So what if the Niners had a high grade on him? And they're like, well, what happened over there? And they could put him over at right tackle, or they could put him at guard and just say, okay, what's with this guy? Because there's no doubt they need offensive line help. And same thing applies to him as there does Thibodeau. They're not going to go get both, but let's say you could give up a 4th round pick for Evan Neal to get a free look at him this year. You'd probably do it, right?
Well, they might get both. I mean, it's all about, can you accumulate enough assets to potentially make a couple of these deals? Other names on this list: Jalen Hyatt, the wide receiver from the Giants, who's a go pattern guy. He's a downfield threat.
That's what they need. I like him.
Yeah,
he was a former 3rd round pick. He hasn't been really good there, but God, at Tennessee, he was good. And
I know. And maybe in Tennessee, they got another guy in the locker room there from Tennessee at wide receiver. Yeah. That might be a popular move with JJ.
Right. Yeah, he's fast too. They need the speed. So
Sam Howell, quarterback, Seattle. They're going to move him.
Yeah, they moved. They just signed. They just got Drew. What's his name back from the Giants, and so he becomes expendable. I liked Howell when he had the 1 year at the Reds with Washington. Drew Lock. Yeah.
He's got a good arm.
He does. And look, he needs a couple of years. I don't know that the Niners, he would be a Niners fit because they just got Mac Jones. But I mean, I'll tell you this right now, he's better than Mac Jones.
Who knows? I mean, we'll see what Mac Jones becomes with the Niners. Tyree Wilson, we're talking about edge rushers. That's a guy. I mean, Tyree Wilson's 275 pounds, and he's played with the Raiders. The Raiders are kind of a circus. If you could get him out of there, I would really be interested to know if Chris liked Tyree Wilson, because Tyree Wilson is got the body. If any D-line coach could ignite the fire, you're talking about a dominating player potentially. I mean, his talent, the risk reward, it's a high risk because it doesn't seem like he's been able to get it going. But man, I mean, if you get this guy going, this guy's 6'6", 275 and ripped.
I remember when he was coming out and they showed him, and I can't remember who he was standing next to, but somebody, it was a media member, but the media member was like 6'3" or 6'4", like a big dude. And he spread his arms out. It was like, are you freaking kidding me? And that's why the Raiders took him at 7. Yeah, he was just, again, that's the height, weight, speed. That's a typical Raiders, Al Davis kind of a pick. But he hadn't produced. He had some injuries, and he still hasn't. And if the Raiders are down on him, and remember, this is when guys get traded. They have a whole new regime there. Like you said, guy comes over from the Bucs, Pete Carroll's here. They didn't make a mistake on him. So what a lot of times they'll do is, we didn't draft the guy. He's not our mistake. Yeah, well, let's see what we can get from him. We can get a 4th round pick. All right, we'll do that. And you got a guy in your hands.
He had 4.5 sacks last year. It wasn't like he did nothing. He had 4.5 sacks.
Yeah, he's not bad. So look, I don't know I don't have insight into the Raiders. I don't know what their view is, the new regime on him. But if they don't like him, that's when guys will get traded because it's not their mistake, and they'd rather clear the house than they would, hanging on to a guy that maybe the people who drafted him would say, oh, we invested in him. Pete Carroll doesn't care. So there's a guy, like you said, who's the perfect size. Niners are big on setting the edge. And so, he's at least an edge setter at some point, and maybe he can become more than that. So look, I like the guy. Now, he's not Thibodeau because Thibodeau's a guy that's already accomplished it, and he is your starter opposite Bosa if you traded for him. But Tyree Wilson, certainly if you like an upside on a guy, he's got a ton of it.
Oh, tons. The rest of this list is interesting too. Greg Newsome, the second, coming off a down year for the Browns, nickel corner, but once upon a time, high pick out of Northwestern, great athlete. Travis Etienne, the running back, whose brother is in this draft. The Jaguars running back has never fulfilled his potential. He's kind of soft.
And they might take Genty at 5. It wouldn't. I mean, I don't think they're going to, but some people are saying that Genty, that Liam Cohen, their new head coach, is saying, hey, we've got Brian Thomas Jr. and what else offensively? So people have talked about McMillan, the receiver for Arizona, if they would move back Jacksonville, or just taking Genty at running back because they're short on playmakers. So there's that thought.
Adafe Owe is an interesting name.
Oh, my God.
That's the Ravens edge rusher who's incredibly athletic. I mean, this guy runs in the 4.5s. So I mean, he's very, very, interesting player for them.
He's different. And I don't know what's going on with the Ravens, because
10 sacks last year.
He's had double-digit sacks in 3 of his 4 seasons. The guy comes out of Penn State. He was raw, and he's your typical, let's take a chance on a guy. He didn't really have the production at Penn State. And, 3 of his first 4 years, he's been a double-digit sack guy. I don't know what's going on with the Ravens there, because he's a guy going, okay, give me an extension, and the Ravens haven't. So I'd have to find out more about him, but he's the most accomplished guy in that list. I mean, you put him opposite Bosa, they're both getting double-digit sacks.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the deal is. I don't know what the deal is there, because he's productive. I don't know why you'd move him. You didn't want to give him. Do you not want to give him an extension? And if not, why not? Because he's been really productive there.
George Pickens, Keyshawn Butte, and Rashad White. Rashad White's interesting because he's a really good receiving running back. If you want, he can catch the ball to the backfield. If the Bucs wanted to get rid of Rashad White, that would be an interesting one. But they have Bucky Irving now. They don't need Rashad White. So it's like, I'm sure they don't want to pay Rashad White. He's only 26, 6 feet, 214-pound running back, pretty good receiver. So that's an interesting list right there. Then those, in addition to those guys, those are rookie guys on rookie contracts who they say are available. Then these are veterans they say are available. Jalen Ramsey, Jair Alexander, Kirk Cousins, Dallas Goedert, Mark Andrews, Trey Hendrickson, Michael Mayer, Jamison Williams. Those are the names out there.
Those first number of guys, they're just way too expensive. They're not going to do that. Williams is interesting. I doubt Detroit would trade him here. I mean, that's exactly what the Niners need, is some speed.
Detroit's shopping him, actually.
Yeah,
Detroit
doubt
is
it.
shopping.
Just,
some people, the Lions are going to trade Jamison Williams, according to Albert Breer. He was the 12th pick overall. They don't want to give him an extension.
Right.
He hasn't been durable. He had 1,000 last year. At 1,001 yards, though, 17.3 yards per catch, and he did have 7 touchdowns. So this guy's a home run hitter.
I like him, but that second group, they're differing, because in Jamison Williams' case, they don't want to give him an extension, but they're not going to give him away. In the situation that you mentioned, a guy like, the receiver with the Giants, or Thibodeau, or Hyatt, or Wilson, or somebody like that, you can probably get those guys for a 3rd or a 4th round pick, because they've just kind of fallen out of favor. Maybe even later. You're right.
Yeah.
Because those guys have kind of fallen out of favor. Miami's not giving Jalen Ramsey away. Not that he's coming here, but Jalen Ramsey's an expensive guy that they're not giving away. Jamison Williams, as you said, was a 12th overall pick. The Lions aren't giving him away. So, in a couple of those guys' cases that you just mentioned, like Hendrickson, for example, look, I love Trey Hendrickson. He's got the 3rd most sacks in the NFL over the last 5 years. He's a $25 to $30 million edge rusher. The Niners can't afford that guy. So I understand those things, but there's a lot of baggage that comes with that second group of guys. And when I say baggage, I mean money.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, all these other guys, first of all, football players, I think Cousins has played his best ball. I think Goddard's played his best ball. I think Andrews has clearly played his best ball.
He's had a lot of injuries.
Hendrickson is the only guy on that second list that really is interesting to me. I like Michael Mayer. I will say that. I think
that would
Michael
be a great
Mayer
get.
Would be a good one.
Yeah. If you could get him, and that's just because Brock Bowers was so good. He was a 2nd round pick out of Notre Dame. He can catch it. He can block. He would be a perfect second tight end. And Luke Farrell's a blocking tight end, so he's a 3rd guy who they got from Jacksonville. So this is a deep tight end class. You and I have talked about it a lot, and it wouldn't surprise me if the Niners went tight end at some point in this draft, because there's a lot of them. But if you want to give me a guy like that, and now he was a 2nd round pick of the Raiders, so are they looking to recoup that? are they looking again with a new regime to say, we didn't draft the guy, give us a 4 or a 5? Now, you want to get a 4 or a 5 for a kid who was a second round pick just a couple years ago who can catch and block? I'd take that guy in a second if I'm the 49ers. And I guess that's what I'm saying is in this draft, they have all these picks, but I do think they're going to trade for a couple of veterans because they need positions where they can say, okay, that's in the bank. Like, if I trade for one of those edge guys you mentioned, one of those young edge guys, they're starting, that's in the bank. Every guy you draft is a lottery ticket. And I don't care how much even Travis Hunter to me, everybody's saying, Travis Hunter is going to be the man. Okay, we'll see. I don't see a player in this draft where I say,
you don't think Travis Hunter's good?
100%.
I think
No, I like him. I like him a lot. But what I'm saying is that if he's that type of kid that's going to walk into the league and say, look, at 182 pounds, I'm going to play both ways or I'm going to be pissed off. Hey, how about let's just see. All right. If you play corner, one team thinks he's a corner, team thinks he's a receiver. That's fine. I think he's going to be fine. But the one thing that I would find pause with and talk to him and his agent about is don't tell us what we're going to do. Like if I think you're a receiver, you're playing receiver. If I think you're Charles Woodson, you're a corner, and maybe you'll moonlight a little bit on offense. But I'll tell you what to do. If I'm paying you all this money and I draft you, don't tell me what you're going to do. And don't tell me you're not going to play if you don't play both ways. You're not Ohtani. You weigh 182 pounds. It's a lot different playing at Colorado versus, Colorado State and then going into in Arizona State and Oklahoma State. You're in the freaking NFL, dude. Like, we'll tell you what to do. I don't love that. I think he's good. Don't get me wrong. And I love his cockiness and confidence, but slow down before you tell us what you're going to do.
There are trade winds blowing though. Supposedly the Steelers are talking to teams about George Pickens. It sounds like Kirk Cousins definitely is going to be on the move.
Why wouldn't Cleveland go get Cousins? Like their quarterback situation is a mess. They're not going to take one at number 2. Who's their quarterback? Kenny Pickens?
Well,
like,
guess
if you're
they're
Cleveland,
saying,
what are you doing?
George Pickens maybe to Green Bay.
I can see that. Pittsburgh's not an organization to put up with a bunch of crap, and George Pickens is dopey.
I'll tell you the guy that I would want.
He's a problem.
I'll tell you the guy that I would want because I think Green Bay is making a mistake here. I think Green Bay's got some good receivers. I think they're going to say goodbye to Dobbs, and I think Dobbs would be a receiver that I would love to get if I were the 49ers.
He'd be a great fill-in.
He's really solid
NFL receiver. I'd take any of those guys that they have. Watson, I like, even though he's injured a lot.
Yeah,
Wicks. And you give me one of those guys to fill in until Ayuk is back. I mean, I know they picked up, Robinson and all that kind of stuff, but man, one of those guys that the Green Bay has on that roster, they have a deep receiver core. Maybe not a star on that core, but pretty good. I'd take any of those guys.
A lot of talk that New England's really fired up about Will Campbell at 4, so it sounds like he's going there. And trade rumors around Kirk Cousins are flowing because obviously he's available. All right. In the last week before the draft, it also gives guys like me time to go look at, because as you would imagine, John, people send me a lot of stuff and be like, hey, Krug, what do you think of this guy? Hey, Krug, what do you think of that guy? And a lot of times I don't think much of them, or I look at him and I'm like, I never heard of this guy, but now I know why I never heard of this guy because he's not really that good, but occasionally you'll have people say, hey, check out this guy. And then I'll go watch him and I'll be like, whoa, I missed the bank on that. I missed the boat on this guy. And there are a couple like that this year. And I'm just, I thought it was, I stumbled onto this draft sleeper article. And he's this guy, top 5 offensive sleepers. And this is who he lists. Right. He lists Kyle McCord. This is a guy online. Kyle McCord, Damian Martinez, who I really do like quite a bit. Damian Martinez. Ty Felton, who I do love a lot from Maryland.
Maryland receiver,
and, yeah. Terrence Ferguson, a tight end from Oregon, and Seth McLaughlin, who won, I think, the Outland Trophy. I think he's the or he won the Remington, I believe. He's the center from the Buckeyes.
Yeah.
Anyway,
off a major injury.
Before I give you a couple guys that I've been watching recently, if I say to you sleeper, do you have a sleeper that you like for this upcoming draft?
Oh, I mean, I have a lot of them. I like Royals, the kid. I went to Utah State, so I watched Royals a lot, the wide receiver out of Utah State.
Yes,
I really
Jalen
like.
Royals is
Yeah,
tremendous.
I really like him. You know who I really like, and he was a big name, and then he wasn't a big name, is Barrett Carter, the linebacker out of Clemson.
Yeah.
I'm seeing him in like the 4th, 5th round range, and I'm like, this dude was somebody that a couple of years ago or a year ago, he was being mocked in like the end of the 1st round, start of the 2nd round. He's really fast and is very athletic. I like him. In fact, I'd love it if the Niners could get him, in the mid rounds and didn't have to go linebacker until then. I think he's a starter in the league. I think he has good speed. I think he's a guy who can cover. I think he's really good. Defensive tackle wise, I mentioned Robinson, the defensive tackle from Nebraska. Now he's 6'6" and about 285, so he's a little light to be kind of a run stuffer type. And it's hard when you're that tall, as we saw with Kinlaw, to keep your pad level down. But I'm a big fan of his. What, another guy, and he's higher up, but Porter, the corner from Iowa State, who's 6'4". That might be, you're getting into the range now of like what Browner used to be with the Seahawks and things like that. It's maybe tough to be that tall, but still, I like his length. And he's a guy that ran in the high 4.3s or low 4.4s. I really
was that
like
again?
him. Porter, Damian Porter, he's a corner from Iowa State.
Yeah.
And he's big. I mean, he's really long, and I'm a big fan. I watched a lot of Big 12 football, being that my son's down in Arizona State, so I watched him a lot. I like him quite a bit. I'm trying to think. Quarterback wise, he mentioned.
I'm going to share the screen. There's a guy that one of the Niner content creators, Ruthless G or something like that, sent me.
Yeah.
And I love this kid. His name's Devontae O'Malley, which is a great name for Northern Illinois. 6'2", 285, 26 reps of 225, which is a good number. 32.5-inch vertical, that's fine. 497 though in the 40 at 290 pounds. And then when you watch this guy, he was a former receiver, so he's kind of twitched up, and then he's got this huge mullet as well. And he's just awesome. I mean, his motor, his speed. Devontae O'Malley, love that guy. Absolutely love that guy.
All right, so give me yours. You're the king of this. All right, those are just a few off the top of my head. There are many, many more. But okay, you're the king of sleepers.
One of the guys. I don't even know if this guy's even a sleeper. I'm kind of embarrassed. This guy's probably not a sleeper. He was one of Kuiper's favorite players. I'm going to share the PFF. This is my guy from PFF who I like. The other guy is from the NBC show, but let me share the screen on this one, and you guys can check this out. Ashton Gelati.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so here's a little breakdown on Ashton Gelati from these jokers.
Gelati, man, at 17, to me feels like the most underrated edge player.
He's an artist.
Nobody talks about it. Like nobody.
I tried. No one wanted to listen to me.
Shut
no one
up.
wanted to listen to me. I thought he should have declared last year.
He plays with a ton of power, really strong in his lower half. And to be honest with you, I waited to watch him. I watched Jordan Birch. I watched Savion Jones. I watched Baron Sorrell. I watched David Walker. I watched all of these guys sort of like in a group because I knew they were all sort of together in the rankings that I had.
Yeah.
And then I watched Gelati, and I was like, what is he versus these other guys? And he gets off the ball quicker and more explosively. He plays with more power. He plays with better leverage. He converts speed to power better. And I go, okay, there we go. Then I'm going to put him ahead of all those guys. And I did. I wasn't sure where I was going to have him in that group. And, turns out he was at the top of that group of players that I mentioned.
Yeah, this guy's a beast. I thought that video was going to include some video, some footage. Let me see if I can find some footage, though. I'm pretty sure you're going to love the footage because, I mean, the guy is unbelievable. Oh, here's James Foster. Okay, so I had James Foster on the other day. This guy's a really good draft guy as well, and he put out this video of Ashton Gelati from Louisville, and he's just a 75-pound defensive end. He's really kind of thick, but he's powerful. Here he is coming off the edge, 2-point stance, dips, rips, boom, down.
Blew right
now
on that tackle.
Look at the power. Look at the power. Just bull rush in your lap.
You know what you like about a guy like that too is if he can play on the edge and then you move him inside, use that quickness against a guard, and you can have a more undersized third down type of guy because like we said, the 49ers need an edge setter But a guy like that could be a 270-pound edge setter, then move to the inside on passing downs against a guard where he's too quick, and then you bring out that quick, third down, kind of a NASCAR package thing. I like bigger defensive ends like that. And there's like Jared Ivey.
That's the move right there that I really like. Look at this one.
But like that's what I like about like a Savion Jones from LSU or a Jared Ivey from Ole Miss. Like you're talking about guys that are
I'm a big
that are like
Ivey guy.
6'5", 6'6", 280 pounds. And so they're edge setters, but they can still get to the quarterback. And then you could get a guy, I like those guys. And then they can move inside, and then you bring in a third down, blitzer or, just a blazer off the edge. And all of a sudden now on your third down package or your passing down packages, you bring in an Ivey or a Jones. They can move to the inside. You bring a fast guy on the outside, and then you got Nick Bosa on the other side. And now you're rolling, I like the versatility of a guy who could maybe go outside, inside that are a little bit bigger rather than the traditional 255-pound edge guy. I like having those big versatile guys.
I mean, that one right there. Did you see that right there? Look at this arm move. Not this one. I'll show you. He's on the defensive left end, and look at him just want this right here. Look at this. Look at that. Dude, he just stiff armed a 350-pound man down to the ground.
Yeah,
in one arm. So Gelati's the motor, the production, he's a little bit thick for your prototypical NFL defensive end, right? He's more almost like a tackle end type guy. He's not super twitchy. He's not, he's more of a motor guy than he is a twitch guy.
It looks like he's got some. I haven't watched him a ton, but just based on the footage, I mean, it looks like he's got some technique, though. I mean, you can see he's doing some power. He's using his hands well. He's setting up the blocker. I mean, he's doing some things like that. If you're that size, if you're the tweener type, especially for the 49ers, and this was a thing that somebody asked John yesterday early in the press conference about what he thought of edge guys, and the first thing he said was setting the edge, because one of the things they've had trouble with, and you and I have sat in the booth and saw this firsthand, is they got to stop the run, and then they can get to the passer. You got to, defensive coordinators say this all the time. You have to earn rushing the passer, and so in order to do that, you've got to be able to stop the run. So obviously all those were passing cut ups. I wonder what he does in terms of setting the edge, because you've got to do that if you're a Niner edge guy.
He's strong against the run for sure. And then watching that film, okay, so sometimes I go down the rabbit hole watching that film. I found this guy who also is pretty amazing. And this is one of the great names in the draft. This guy started at Harvard and finished up at Louisville, and his name's Thor. His name's Thor Griffith.
Yeah.
And look, check this out. Thor is pretty monster.
I bet he killed in the Ivy League.
The combine is defensive tackle Thor Griffith from Louisville. He spent 3 seasons looking basically unblockable at Harvard before transferring to the Cardinals this season. He was insanely productive at Louisville this year with an 84.3 overall grade and an 84 run defense grade. He reportedly can bench 225 pounds 45 times with a sub 5 40-yard dash to boot. He could prove himself to be one of those late round trench player gems who you bet on due to standout combine numbers.
Yeah, this guy, I wouldn't draft this guy. But I'm calling this guy. I'm calling this guy when the draft's over, especially if after I get Gelati and I'm like, hey, bro, we got Gelati here. We're having a big old Louisville party, and come on aboard.
Well,
because that guy, Thor Griffith, the strength, you didn't see it in there, but the strength is unbelievable. Those 42 reps mean something. When a guy can put up 42 reps at 225, that's a lot of lifting. That's a lot of time to weight room. But then this guy's also got quickness and ability, and he made lots of tackles. So
he better have graduated from Harvard, because I'm not doing 3 years at Harvard for the rest, because I have that on my resume. And then you went to Louisville and graduated. Like, dude, you were that close to getting a Harvard degree. Just finish at Harvard, then do your, you can be a grad student and play at Louisville. But I mean, my God, man, if he left Harvard without getting a degree, that's a major gaffe on his part.
No. He got his degree. Also, he thrives. He plays the 2-eye. He plays a 3-tech. He had a 12.5% pass rush win rate, which was 4th among all defensive linemen in the draft. He had an 88.4 run defense grade, and that was 1st. So, this guy is the Niners have 2 major problems that they have to solve out of the chute. And that is, they have to be able to stop the run the ball at the point, and stop the freaking run.
Yeah, that's
And
major.
they don't. They really don't. They don't stop the run, and they can't run the ball inside. So that's a major concern for me. I do have a film here. I'm gonna show you though on this guy because he is worthy of watching for a couple seconds. This is Thor Griffith, ladies and gentlemen, the great Thor Griffith.
This is why people tuned in today, by the way. They're like, Krug, right
Oh,
before
look
the
at
draft, we got to get some sleepers
This
out
guy's
here.
been circled, this big, thick defensive tackle. All right, here we go. Stands him up, throws the running back down. Not a lot of movement there. Short arm, buried that guy. Didn't look great there. Strong at the point. Pursues down the line. I mean, this is going to be
He's definitely a plotter.
He's a plotter. He's a plugger. He's a plugger, but he's enormously strong.
He's a phone booth guy for sure.
Yeah, he's a phone booth plugger. Look at that. I mean, Thor Griffith.
He had to have loved playing at Harvard because it's all these, guys who are going to be like high-end, day traders and all that kind of stuff, like, big-time millionaires and everything. And he's just chucking those guys around. That's funny.
Yeah, so there you go. That's great funny. Thor Griffith.
Thor. Yeah.
One more guy that I want to mention. Well, let's hit some supers before we get out of here. We got this one from Paul Malloy. Paul Malloy.
Lawyer Malloy.
New member. I always give a little clap. For new members.
Golf clap.
Aboard. Welcome aboard.
Very nice. Very nice.
Enjoy the green room. Drink and eat anything you like that's there. 6 minute abs, which is that is
I wish I had 6 minute abs.
That was the Ben Stiller movie.
Yeah.
Very funny movie. The guy killed somebody and put him in a bag and was carrying the bag in the front seat when they were discussing 6 minute abs. Classic American cinema. He says Milroe will be the steal of the draft. Bama has no skill players in the draft. Big mistake passing on him. Time to evolve, Kyle. Wow. Okay, so wait a second. This guy, this is a very, very intriguing prospect. Why? Okay, so he played at Bama. He's 6'1", like 225, and absolutely ripped. Totally shredded. Incredible shape. The guy has 4.3 speed. So as far as running quarterbacks go, this guy's a home run hitter. This guy can get to the edge and he's gone. Now in Mobile at the Senior Bowl, he looked like he was playing a different sport. Like he was so bad.
He was like, and he was in the bowl game too. I mean,
but he also has had some moments of unbelievable. I mean, did anybody see the Iron Bowl when he hit Isaiah Bond in the back of the end zone after running around with the game winner? I mean, this guy's got some highlights. If you scouted off highlights, you would draft Milroe in the top 10. But if you really watched him in Mobile, you wouldn't draft him if the draft were 10 rounds long. So I don't know what to say.
6 minute abs, all due respect, I wouldn't touch him. You have to win from the pocket in this league, and he has a long way to go, and it's so hard to develop quarterbacks. Somebody said, I read something the other day where he was the best running prospect ever. You ever heard of Michael Vick? He was pretty good. But having said that, the guy can run. There's no doubt. But Justin Fields can run. And if I'm the Jets and I'm a Jets fan, I'm pissed off that he's going to be my quarterback this year. You have to win from the pocket. And Jalen Milroe is interesting. I saw a video on Jalen Milroe. Both his parents are from the military. He's very disciplined. He's used to being coached. He's a great kid. He has a great character. He's a great leader. He's going to the draft. He's going to be the last one in the green room, and he knows what the odds are against him. But he's going to Green Bay, and he's going to be sitting in the green room, but he just believes, So he's a great kid. I like him. It's just like you said. I saw the Senior Bowl practices. I saw the bowl games. I saw some really bad footage of this guy. He's a hell of an athlete. I'm not here to say he's not, but it's been proven time and time and time again that you got to somehow win from the pocket, and he has a long way to go in that regard.
One guy that I absolutely love, and had him on the show, great guy. And to me, I absolutely know that this guy is going to be a good NFL player. I don't know if he's going to if he's going to be a starter or just a great special teamer, but he's going to be a great NFL player. I'm going to share the screen on this one. Great kid, had him on, and I'm just such a believer in this guy's game. And this kid's amazing. Just an amazing prospect. Great kid, great family. His brother played in the NFL. His brother Larry played in the NFL. Eugene Asante, Auburn linebacker. Check this out.
At the combine. He was a reserve linebacker for 3 years at North Carolina and only played in a few games in his first season at Auburn. But over the last 2 years, he's been a consistent starter, and we've seen him flying all over the field. According to Bruce Feldman, Asante could crack a sub-4.5 40-yard dash, which would put him in the 95th percentile and above for speed at the position. Asante also put up a sneaky 84.4 pass rush grade at Auburn in 2024. Auburn linebacker Eugene Asante is a sleeper for one.
This guy's an amazing player. His guy played the fourth quarter of the Senior Bowl like it was Super Bowl Sunday. I mean, it was unbelievable. He was flying all over the place. He's super passionate, loves to play, hitter deluxe. His brother Larry played in the NFL, and he is absolutely a lock to be a day 3 sleeper. M Squared says, what matters more, film or combine measurements and look? Film. The film, the old saying, I lie, you lie, the film doesn't lie. The combine is just a fact-finding mission.
It's supposed to be.
You find out about their height, their weight, their speed, and nobody who does this for a living ever discovers a player at the combine. Those numbers reinforce what you saw or didn't see. So if you see those numbers and you see the rankings and you see the guy 1, 2, 3, and you think the guy who's listed 1 is the best player and the second guy is the second best, that's not, that's not what you're looking at. You're just looking at an individual athletic test and how they ranked in that test. And that could be, some schools do these tests over and over and over again to prep these guys throughout the year, and their players test well. Other guys are doing this test for like the 3rd or 4th time.
Yeah.
And they're not going to test as well. So there's also that factor. And what it is that what teams are trying to do as part of this process is they're trying to minimize risk. And so what I mean by that is there are standards by which the NFL goes with, right? So an edge rusher, for example, on average is like 6'3.5", 252 pounds, runs a 4.6, 740. You know what I mean? They do these measurables. And so what they're doing is it's almost like Vegas. If you fall outside of those parameters, then the film has to be just otherworldly outstanding. If you're in those, but like we talk about a Shamar Stewart, if you've just got all these measurables from that, but then your tape is just okay, they're okay with taking. That's why I think there are so many failures in the first round, because they take these averages, and then if a guy is way above it but has okay film, they fall in love so much because they're human beings. They're not computers, and they fall in love with all these height, weight measurables. And that's where I think lots of mistakes are made, because they take averages and then they look at it and they try to equate it into almost like an odds thing. So the odds that this guy hits, the odds this guy misses. Again, you can go to Brock Purdy with it. Just about 6'1", doesn't have the rocket arm, all these different things, but they didn't take enough time to talk to the guy, to understand, to do chalkboard work, to all these different things that it takes. They fall in love with guys. And so they try to take the odds and they say, okay, the odds are that this guy hits because the average and the measurables are this. And it goes to, and I can't believe that we've got almost an hour 30 into this thing, and you have not mentioned Willie Lampkin one time. You have failed us all a million times. But here's a guy that's 5'11" and 285 pounds, and you're going, he doesn't fit into any of the measurables. An average guard in the NFL, I'm just doing this off the top of my head, is probably 6'4" and 312 pounds or something, right? And has these certain measurables. He doesn't fall into any of them, but yet he's a football player. So as you've pointed out, we've discussed many times, he might be able to, he doesn't have the length, the arm length, any of these type of things. He might be a center just because he's athletic enough to get out to those people. And you've mentioned as a fullback, maybe he falls back into this. But he might get taken in the 5th round. But there are these guys who fall out of all the measurables, but they better be great on tape. So the original question was, do you look at the tape or do you look at the measurables? Well, there's certain measurables within the league, and I am talking about arm length and hand size, depending on what the position is. Seattle, for example, with the Legion of Boom, they wouldn't draft a corner that had arms that weren't at least 33 inches. 32 and 5/8, sorry.
has to be 33. So there are certain teams, because of what they do, want certain things to fall within the parameters. And that means you're going to miss on guys. And it means you're going to over-evaluate sometimes the combine. And even though they don't want to, they're human beings and they fall in love with these measurables. And it happens all the time.
One guy who's going to be, I think, burned by that this year is Tez Johnson, because he only weighs
Oregon wide
155 pounds. And I think he's going to wind up late on day 3. And people are going to be like, wait, why did Tez fall all the way to the 6th round? Well, because Tez is 154 pounds and ran 4.51. And then when he had a chance to improve it at the pro day, he opted not to. So I think that's that. We'll see, because he did light up Penn State and it was impressive. One film, somebody says what matters more, the film or the combine measurements. One guy's film this year was just absolutely beastly. And when I watched this guy, every time I watched him, I was like, God, the Niners got to find a way to get this guy. And I'm going to show him right here. He is really, really unbelievable. And this could be the Debo replacement, John. Savion Williams. And everybody knows Savion Williams.
They got 2 receivers in this draft.
Yeah, Fetch is good too. But look at Savion Williams in this film.
I mean, that's not like you're not playing. That's not
direct snap.
Louisiana Monroe.
Direct snap, running back, spinning, running in the middle of the field, now getting to the edge, waving no to Kembe Mutombo finger. Here he is popping to the corner, gets to the edge, toying with these guys' footwork. This guy's 6'5", 2 1/4. He's got huge hands, 93rd percentile. Gigantic wingspan. He's a former high school quarterback. He was a Wildcat quarterback for TCU. Look at this down the seam. Goodbye. And look at him run away. I mean, those guys aren't catching him.
Plus, you love dudes like that who played quarterback because they understand the whole concept of the offense and not just their position.
This guy's got a lot of Debo, man. His ball skill. There's better receivers with better ball skills, but once this guy's got it in his hands, I mean, you're talking about just jumbo 6'5", 2 1/4 pound guy who runs angry and hurdles people and stuff. I mean, that's pretty incredible.
Well, and there are, I know they need to go wide receiver in this draft at some point. I don't think they should go too early with it because John Lynch talked about depth. There's a lot of depth at wide receiver. I'm not saying all of it's going to be great, but what they need is, because they've got their 3 starters right now till Ayuk comes back, and they need a specific thing to me, which is they need some speed with their receiving core. Ricky Pearsall is not slow. I mean, he's a low 4.4 guy. But Jennings is not a fast guy. Demarcus Robinson is not a fast guy. Ayuk, when he comes back, I don't know what he's going to be. He was fast, but he's not a 4.3 guy. That's what Danny Gray was supposed to be. That's what they've tried to get for years under Kyle Shanahan. Somebody.
What do you want, though? I mean,
you mentioned the kid Noel from Iowa State. I don't think he's a bad guy.
Yeah.
They need to find somebody with some speed. And again, not just speed. Like there's a kid, Deontay Thornton of Tennessee, who's a 4.33 guy who's 6'5", 220, and I mean he's just a burner straight down the field. So I mean,
or Arian Smith. How about Arian Smith from Georgia? I mean,
if you wanted to take a flyer on one of those guys late, I wouldn't be opposed to it. But I think those guys, I wouldn't call them risks. I would just simply say that you might not get what you need to get out of them in the first year or two. But they need to find somebody. They've tried to get speed onto this team at the receiver position, and they just haven't been successful with it. This is a deep draft for wide receivers. It doesn't have the high end that it's had, and you and I have talked about him. I mean, McMillan's going to go. It sounds like Matthew Golden from Texas is going to go. Burden is dropping a little bit. He's probably going to be a second rounder. But then after that, it's beauty in the eye of the beholder. There's big receivers, as you just showed. There's fast receivers. There's all sorts of types. But the Niners need. And I don't mean a 5'9", 175 guy. I'm talking about, they need to find that, at least like a 5'10", 190 with some speed. Because you got to be, I don't care if you're just a fast guy, you've still got to be physical and a blocker if you're the Niners, no matter what. So they got to find that. They're missing that element in this offense.
The guy who I think is their guy is a guy they had a visit with. He's one of my favorite sleepers in this draft. It's Ole Miss wide receiver Jordan Watkins. Now, this guy is really something, man. This guy runs 4.37 in the 40. Inside, outside, he's very versatile. Yeah, he's a yak threat. He's competitive as heck. He had 8 catches for 254 yards and 5 touchdowns against Arkansas. Okay. It was so amazing that I actually dug it up for you because it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. You're going to see this yourself.
You know, many guys have like they don't want their wife to see their computer because they think they might have some unsavory things. Your computer is full of highlights. I love it. Your wife's like, "What's in your computer?" Highlights, college highlights.
I get this. Who is Jordan Watkins? Well, honey, it's funny you should ask. He's got 4.37 speed.
Is that OnlyFans? No, it's not OnlyFans, honey.
It's not OnlyFans. It's only Ole Miss fans.
Exactly.
Here we go. And Jackson Dart is the quarterback here, and he's throwing. This kid had 8 catches for 254 in this game, and you're going to see all 8 catches. Okay, this guy is 6 feet, 200 pounds.
See, that's the size you're looking. I mean, you don't want a small. I'm not a Cowan guy. You know,
4.37 did it in the SEC. Okay, and this guy, and he plays with some urgency, and you'll see a variety of routes here. Watch, you're going to see some. Now you got a little. This is down the field, yeah. But this guy can run a number of different routes. 4.37. They looked at him at the end of right before a couple weeks ago. This is a good football player, man. This guy is a really good football player. He would make their team. He would give them that speed that they need. Jordan Watkins, day 3 wide receiver for Ole Miss. Let me see. I think there's one more here.
See, and I think that's where they're going to be looking. Again, if somebody pops into their lap, you're going to take best player available. I understand that. But I think John yesterday told us that the power of this draft is in its depth. I think especially at the receiver position. And as I said, I think beauty can be in the eye of the beholder. There's a lot of different receivers. McMillan, people like Golden, people like Burden, people like. And then after that, I think it kind of depends on what exactly are you looking for.
I'll tell you the other guy that's really super intriguing.
They might want to cover that dude, Arkansas. I'm just saying, Arkansas might want to cover
Hey, Arkansas, you may want to play some defense. The guy who I think is probably another Niner guy that they've talked about. And they brought him in as Brashard Smith. And Brashard Smith
he's interesting.
Is a really interesting player because he was a wide receiver converted to running back. But if you watch him, he's much more of a receiver, and he's got all kinds of speed and moves, and he's super dynamic, and he's dangerous. I mean, he's a super dangerous guy with the ball in his hands. And give you a taste of Brashard Smith here, breakaway speed. Get a little breakaway here. Here he is breaking away. This is a SMU player who I think could play receiver or running back. For Kyle, he would probably play receiver. And here he is, and he's a home run hitter. I mean, you look at this guy, 2 plays, and you'll be like, look at this guy. It's number 1 in the backfield. Boom, he's through the line of scrimmage. Oh, but he's not tackled. Now he's gone. Down the sideline. Is that guy going to catch him? Yeah, he did. Here he is running back. A little pick and slide, a little shifty. Spin move. But he's just electric. See, I mean, you're not getting this guy. Fumbled caught it again.
I don't have his numbers in front of me, but he's about 5'9", 195, if memory serves, which sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't. He's not the biggest guy. But as you can see there, that's not always a bad thing because you hide behind the line, and then he's so quick that all of a sudden he's on you before you can even do something. And, if he pops it outside, is that going to work in the NFL? You got to be able to run through the tackles. And you can see right there, there he is running through I think he's a receiver. That's what you want to see.
I think he's a little lean as far as his thighs and stuff. He's not really a running back. He's playing running back in this film, but I mean, I would play him as a receiver. He's just
it looks like a slot.
Yeah, he's a slot receiver who's super explosive and fast, and he's just shifty. And the fact that he was used as a running back bodes well for his run after the catch ability, and you could throw it to him short. Like
he would be not exactly a Debo replacement because Debo was built differently, but that's where you bring in the element because Kyle likes it of, your jet sweeps and things like that because they need somebody who can run that type of stuff because that's a staple of Kyle's offense. He likes to have guys who can run jet sweeps and wide and all those kind of things, and that would be a guy who would be perfect for that role.
Yeah, very interesting and just an explosive. Well, this is a nice one too. He cuts back. We'll stop sharing. All right, here we go. A couple more supers here. We got this one from Fuji Simeon. What are the odds the Niners decide to trade back?
Hey,
I think Lynch told us yesterday, Fuji, that he wants to trade back and that he would prefer to trade back, but that everybody wants to go that way. And so what he was really saying there is that there's going to be almost like a competition. I would say the teams that want to trade up are probably going to have a number of options. And so the price is going to be really reasonable. The question is this: the Niners might like a player who's in the 20 to 30 range, and they may not think it's much of a risk to trade back. And so they don't need to ask for a ton. So maybe they could take a third and a fifth or something like that, where somebody else is like, I need your 2. Well, they may take less, or maybe they take a player. I think they've got a lot of flexibility, and it makes sense for the Niners to trade back if the prospect they like is going to be back. But I get the sense that Lynch seemed like he had these exploratory conversations, was pretty convinced that he was going to have to pick at 11. And so they're planning to pick at 11.
Yeah, and that's kind of what he indicated yesterday. The thing is that where things change, and you mentioned this, it's driven a lot of times by quarterbacks. Well, let's say Pittsburgh does love Shador and wants to get up. Now, 10 is a lot of spots. As you said, you talked about this earlier on in the show, which would maybe cost you your first rounder next year. If he's in the 16, 17 range, Pittsburgh's at 21, they don't have to give up next year's first. And I think that would be more likely for them to do. But here's another name. Let's say Tyler Warren for some reason drops. I don't think he's going to, but he's a unique player. What do you
think of him?
I like him a lot. I don't like him for the Niners, only because he would seem to be a luxury pick. In most years for the 49ers, getting Tyler Warren would make a ton of sense. I think he's a luxury pick for the 49ers. But let's say he's there at 11, just for the sake of conversation, and you're Indianapolis, who's somebody who's talked about a tight end. Would they go 14 to 11? Yeah. Could you pick up a third or a fourth round pick for that? Yeah. That makes a ton of sense, because now you get that third or fourth, and that gives you versatility to move around the draft more if you're the Niners. It gives you an opportunity to trade for a veteran, like we said, a Thibodeau, or somebody who might be available after the Giants take Abdul Carter. So now that gives you flexibility in the draft. Maybe you use that pick, maybe you trade that pick later. So to move to 11 or 14, and if you're John Lynch, and he said this to us yesterday, somebody asked him point blank, are you pretty honed in on who you're going to take? And he was like, I have like 4 or 5 guys. So let's say that Indy calls, Warren's on the board. You don't feel like you can take him because that's a luxury pick and you have too many other needs. You're only moving back 3 spots. If you're moving back 3 spots and you have 3 guys you love on the board that are similarly graded, then you trade back. I mean, so when people say, well, you can't trade back. Well, if Tyler Warren's on the board and he's unique and Indy needs a tight end, you can. And if you have 3 players you like and you're moving back 3 spots and you're fine with one of those 3, then yeah, you're going to make that move back and you might pick up a 3rd round pick for it, which is a great deal for the 49ers. So I understand what John is saying, and he's right. In a vacuum, we're not going to be able to trade back, but it is obvious that it's who's on the board. Let's say that you don't love Mason Graham, and I don't know what their grade is on Mason Graham. I love the guy, but let's say that these insiders are right and he's sliding. Now he's sitting at 11. You don't love him, and all of a sudden Miami's at 13. They need a defensive tackle. You move back 2 spots. You get a 3rd or a 4th round pick. They get Mason Graham. You move back 2 spots. So it really does depend on those kind of things. The quarterbacks are the drivers for big move ups. But when there's a unique player who's either slid that maybe you don't like as much, or I think Warren is a key guy, I think maybe the Jets at 7, the Bears at 10 may take him. But if he's sitting at 11 and Chargers are another team. Now, I don't think they jump up 10 spots, but they need a tight end for Justin Herbert. And all of a sudden, Jim Harbaugh loves having tight ends. So, there's Loveland in there too. So maybe the Chargers are like, hell, I ain't moving up 10 spots for a tight end. But I could see Indianapolis doing it, moving up 3 spots if they like him. And a lot of people have projected that he would go to the Colts at 14. And that's where teams think is like, hey, if, we mentioned Mason Graham. If a guy's within the Niners aren't going to trade up. But if he's sitting there at 9 and you call New Orleans and it's not prohibitive to go up and you really like Mason Graham and he's within 2 spots of you, why not go up and get him? So everybody's saying it's going to be hard to trade up or trade down, sorry. But if there's a certain player there, then all of a sudden you can make a trade down. So it all just depends.
And don't forget the free agent market's still available as well. I mean, if you decide, in the middle of the draft that you're going to have to pass on a corner, go sign Asante Samuel Jr. If you decide you're going to wind up not getting the receiver, maybe go sign a Keenan Allen. I mean, those guys are out there and they'd be pretty intriguing for the Niners. Fuji with this one, he says game plan for Friday. Larry Keg, John Grill Cam for Friday.
Yeah.
Friday's rounds 2 and 3.
Yeah.
That's always a fun
I think you're
one.
going to be busy. Are you going to be busy Friday?
I'm just gonna do videos when the Niners, and then I'm gonna do I'm doing a live stream with Dieter post draft Friday night and Jake. So they have their own draft guide out. I'm gonna try to get them promote it for them, and so we're gonna come. I think Friday night, Thursday night, I'm gonna be doing the KMBR show for a couple hours, and then I'll go live before the KMBR show after the Niners pick. So when the Niners pick, I'll go live. And then I'll go do the Niner post game on KMBR from 9 to 11, and then I may go live again. Who knows? And recap. So we'll see. But then Friday we'll go live when the Niners pick, and then we'll also do a little post game with those guys. Saturday, Kev's going to join me for a bunch of stuff on Saturday. I know. So every time they pick,
you got to know the draft if you're going to do weekend draft. Like I said, I know.
Seriously, remember
I have done the weekend draft with you on KMBR, and I had to bone up because, like I said, the first few rounds, I could probably go.
It was me, you, and Middlecoff.
Right, that's right, and I could go deep into a few sleepers up to a couple hundred picks maybe. I've done my homework, but man, you get into the deep Saturday, Sunday stuff, and that's not Sunday anymore, but it used to be. You're carrying it. Like I'll tell you this right now. Like when I would do the draft show with you and me, it was different. But like Papa is not a big college football watcher. Like he's big in the NFL, but he'll cram for this thing. Yeah, but he's like first round. He might be like first 50 picks. Like first 50 picks, he's dialed. After that, nah, it's over. Like he ain't going more than that.
Yeah, that's it. That's where it ends.
Yeah.
It's an illness.
I know it is. This is your day, man. Look, I love it. This is Christmas, man. Tomorrow, it's exciting for everybody because you know what? I love when free agency starts, but free agency is not how you build a football team. This is how you build a football team.
Can I also show you a super sleeper?
Yes. If you haven't mentioned him so far to this point of this process, I'll be shocked. You got a new guy?
And I'm going to show his athleticism with what he does. I'm not going to show you. I'm going to show you a celebration, but then I'm going to tell you about this guy. Okay, here he is. This is amazing. Let me take this off the screen. Sorry about that. We will share the screen. This guy's name is Davin Van. Have you heard of him? NC State.
No.
He wears number 1.
Gymnast.
That number 1. He's 6'1", 270 edge rusher.
I was about ready to say he looks thick. I mean, it was like when I first saw him, I thought maybe wearing number 1, he was a wide receiver, but he's thick.
Dude, this guy is a hell of a player.
Mary Lou Bratton.
Davin Van. Seriously, this guy is an incredible player. I had him in my notes from early in the year, and I forgot it. I forgot he was even in this draft. Nobody talks about this guy at all. He was snubbed by the combine. He made the Bruce Feldman freaks list for a reason. This guy's 6'2", 275. They clocked him at 4.69 in the 40 with a 33.5-inch vertical. He led the nation this year with 6 forced fumbles to go with 8 sacks. Davin Van. He plays for NC State. I mean, we're not talking about some guy who plays for, Podunk U. Right. This guy plays in the ACC.
We just saw him do that gymnastic move.
He benches 440. He did 300. He did 31 reps at 225. He squats 580. Former state champion heavyweight wrestler. His wrestling background is evident on tape. This guy is unbelievable. I got to show you this. This is the film that you got to look at real quick. I showed you that jump. That's just a little taster. That's a little
nothing.
Test. That's a little taste test. Ain't this? Look at this. Here he is at defensive end. Now he's playing. This is how he forces all these fumbles. So he's playing up, right defensive end, hand usage, boom, sack, ball comes out.
See, I like guys who force turnovers.
Oh yeah, this is it. This guy's D Ford. He's like D Ford.
Like it's great that you get the quarterback, and in the case of like Shamar Stewart, that you get close to the quarterback.
Now he's inside. Look at him. Now he's playing inside.
I want you to turn it over.
Inside rusher, Riley Leonard, sit down.
Probably
2 guys over there. Look at that. They know they chip him. He spins inside. He gets chipped. He still gets the quarterback. Now he's
See, I
over
think that's a skill. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
When
This
it's
guy's a
great getting
beast.
close. It's great getting the pressures. It's all those kind of things. But you see how he finishes? Like that's a skill. And so I like pressures and all those kind of things, but I like a dude who makes plays, who knocks the ball out, who finishes the sack. Like that's what it's about.
Yeah. And he's a
So I
little
know that there's a lot of
shorter.
analytics. You know, there's a lot of analytics in football. Oh, he pressured him. He did this. He did that. But I like the dude who's a finisher, man.
Yeah. Davin Van, NC State. Just remember that one. He's a
Is he a free agent type?
Day 3 guy, probably. Free agent, yeah. But, I mean, he played in a 3-3-5 scheme. Here, I'll retweet this.
You know what the most impressive backflip, he started with a backflip, this dude? You and I was telling this story the other day on my show. You and I stood there. We had John Taylor on. We had JT in. And a couple of years ago, he was 57 years old. And we were standing in that area, you know, afterwards that we do the thing. And JT does a backflip. So I go, dude, I heard you could do a backflip, just a standing backflip. Before the words are even in my mouth, JT does a backflip. And I mean, he's 57 at the time. It was like 2 years ago. And I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? Like, my God, man, these dudes, like that's otherworldly, man. That's just like this guy's, oh my God. Like he's 57. Like these guys are athletes. They're such good athletes, these guys. My God.
Davin Van. All right. A couple last supers before we get out of here. As far as keg, no keg, but maybe check back later. Maybe Saturday. I could go pony keg Saturday.
Check back later.
Do you remember? Are we gonna do our Friday bottom of the pint?
Yeah, let's discuss because I've got some things to do with the draft as well. So it's just gonna kind of
we might have to
just only for
one.
one. We might have to skip for one just because it's with the draft and everything. And
draft night, or maybe we'll do some kind of condensed. Thomas Selman says hello from Georgia. Hello, Georgia. Just got back from my first trip to San Francisco and loved it. Did Half Moon Bay too. Thoughts on Rocket Sanders, running back from South Carolina? Oh, I love this.
Ball security.
Oh, has he fumbled a bunch? Security. Yeah, I think he fumbled.
Yeah, he's a really good back. He's quick,
explosive, and
he's
big.
One cut and go. I mean, he'd be a Niner consideration. He's a one cut and go. He's big, but he has ball security issues. And you know this as well as I do. Bobby Turner does not like that.
No,
that's a deal killer for the Niners.
That's a bad one. He's a gap runner with some explosive speed, though, man. There's no
I like him. I think he had double-digit touchdowns last year. But he's a north-south runner, but
he's a big.
And he
kid
did it
too.
at a couple of different SEC schools. I know he finished at South Carolina. He at Arkansas before. He was somewhere else in the SEC too. So I mean, the guy can play. It's just if you can't hold on to the ball and you're a Niner.
Yeah, no, that's. I do like him though. I do like him. I really like him. He had 2 different injuries from 2023, but he bounced back this year. Raheem Rocket Sanders.
Yeah, no, he's good. I like him, and I don't mind him as a late rounder or as a free agent pickup. But you got to hang on to the ball here, or you won't stay around.
Yeah, no, there's no question about it. And in a deep draft of running backs, he's not nearly my favorite. I mean, I like Kyle Monangi. I like Taj Brooks.
Big dude.
I like Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt. There's other guys that I like a lot more. RJ Harvey is one of my very favorite players.
He's going to go earlier than people think. A lot of people like him. Central Florida guy. A lot of people like that guy.
A lot of people like RJ Harvey. Fujisimi, quarterback Dart, not attending the draft. What round does he go now? I would say he's a first or second round pick. I think he'll be off the board before the Niners pick at 43.
You know what? He might be one of those guys because I don't think he's going to go in the first round. I could be wrong. Maybe Pittsburgh likes him more than Sanders. But the one thing about him is, remember when they finish the first round and they reconvene, that 33rd pick becomes a massive pick. And I could see, and this happens all the time, either you get that quarterback at the end of the first round if you like him because you get that extra year, or when they reconvene and that guy goes at 33. So remember, Lamar Jackson was a 32nd pick. Teddy Bridgewater was a 32nd pick. Like you see a team come up there all the time to pick up a guy that they like and they get that extra year with the guy. So there's that side of it, or there's that, hey, you got the 33rd pick. I think the Browns have the 33rd pick. So it's like, okay, let's get with them and see what they want. Let's say the Browns don't take a quarterback at 2 and Dart sitting there, start the second round, then does Cleveland take Dart and they get Hunter and they get Dart? Remember, Drew Brees was a top of the second round guy. And when the Chargers actually had the first pick, didn't like Vic, traded it to Atlanta, took Tomlinson at 5. They traded back to 5 with Atlanta. Atlanta took Vic number 1. One of the top picks of the second round, if it wasn't the top pick of the second round, was Drew Brees. So lots of teams will do that, is they're not convicted fully on a quarterback. But if you take that, they're going to take Travis Hunter. Will Cleveland double back then and either wait with that first pick and take Jackson Dart, or would they not take a chance and say, okay, we'll move up a pick and we'll take Jackson Dart? So I can see a team like Cleveland doing that, or the Giants, who have a high second round pick. Obviously at 3, they're going to take Abdul Carter. Could they either want to move into the end of the first round, or sit there early in the second round and take their quarterback there? Lots of quarterbacks go early in the second round or at the end of the first round.
Maybe I'm going to show my age here, but I don't want to draft a guy to be the quarterback of my team, the leader of my football team, who plays with Star Wars action figures. That's just me.
I mean, it's kind of like
that's just me.
It's kind of like there's a couple of quirky.
I got nothing against fondling some Chewbacca or whatever.
Yeah.
But you know what?
Fondling some Chewbacca.
I won't judge your C-3PO, but just stay away from my huddle.
Well, I would say that
he's a
for
big
example,
Star Wars dork.
Yeah, but like Will Levis, for example, nothing against
that.
Well, of course, there's something against it. You're holding bias. You think he's a dork. But here's the thing:
you got to lead a room full of badass guys, and you've got a Princess Leia Star Wars action figure in your locker.
Okay, but is it worse that like Will Levis, who a lot of people had in the first round, then he drops, of course, goes to Tennessee, has not been successful. He put mayonnaise in his coffee. Like at that minute, you're like, if I'm doing an interview with him and he's throwing mayonnaise in his coffee, I'm going, bro, we ain't drafting you.
Bro, mayonnaise in your coffee,
bro.
Get out of here.
Yeah, no way.
Don't come back.
Yeah, I'm not doing
mayonnaise in your coffee.
I'd rather have a guy playing with Star Wars action figures than putting mayonnaise in his coffee. He's not my quarterback.
Come on.
Well, dude. Here's the other thing.
If you walked in on your son and he's playing with Star Wars action figures.
And he's above the age of 15.
What do you say? What do you say?
Yeah, that's a problem. But again, here's the other thing. I would hold this against Mahomes. Mahomes orders.
What's the problem?
Mahomes orders like the nicest steak in the house and throws Heinz ketchup on it. Like that'd be like, bro, what are you doing?
That's bad.
Like I don't use ketchup. Like again, do whatever you want. I don't care. Put pineapple on a pizza. Whatever. I don't care. You
do whatever you got to do. Whatever you got to do.
I don't do ketchup on anything. Like it's not my thing. I'll put salsa or hot sauce or something. I'm not a ketchup guy. But he's putting ketchup on I'm like, he's got the money to do it. Like we're talking like a Wagyu.
He's eating Kobe beef.
He's eating Wagyu or Kobe beef or something, and it's $500 an ounce. And then he's putting the Heinz on it. It's like,
do you have any Del Monte? Do you have any Del Monte?
Dude, we don't have ketchup in this restaurant. He's like, well, crush some tomatoes, man. It's like, no, we don't have ketchup. You don't put ketchup on a steak.
I was called it ketchup, but somebody says it's not ketchup. It's catsup.
Nah, it's ketchup.
It's ketchup, right?
Even if it was catsup at some point, we've Americanized everything. And
it's ketchup. It's ketchup.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
All right. Sorry,
that's ketchup on a steak's bad, but Star Wars action figures
worse.
That's bad too.
I guess so. Could you imagine if that got around too? It was like you walk in there and you're one of those Star Wars dorks, and you walk in. It's like he's walking in and he's like a stormtrooper or something. It's like, what the hell are you dressed like that for? Oh, the new Star Wars is coming out. Get out of my locker room. Get out. Get out.
What happened at Niners camp today was that the 49ers starting quarterback was attacked by a practice squad defensive tackle. And it was over a Star Wars action figure that the quarterback suggested was stolen from his locker. Oh my God, that would just be absolutely epic. Wait, we got this one from M Squared. I comp Graham with Breeze and Nolan with Carter. I think he's talking about
Brian
Breeze, the guy for the Saints. Yeah, played at Clemson.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan. I wasn't a huge fan.
Nolan with Jalen Carter, which I mean,
Graham's different.
I like Jalen Carter a lot more than I like Breeze, but I also like Graham a little bit more than I like Breeze.
Well, Carter's in a whole different world. Jalen Carter in college threw people around, and he does it at the pro level.
He's
Breezy,
also,
I'm not a big,
he's also about 20 pounds heavier, too.
Yeah.
He's about 318 pounds at that
and
point.
I'm not a Breezy guy with the Saints. Graham is different, man. We showed the highlights earlier. He's a wrestler. He's a leverage guy. He's a Tasmanian devil. I like him a lot. And if he was there at 11, I couldn't race the card up, even though it's not really a card anymore, fast enough. I just think he would be a great tone setter for this team. I really like him. And like I said, this is about teams overrating height, weight, speed in the first round. And the process is so long that people are starting to say, oh, Mason Graham. And they're just doing it based on the fact that his athletic traits aren't at the top level, but he's a football player. And he understands leverage and how to play and all these things. And he's clearly been coached well. And, he's a great football player. And so, look, I'd take him at 11. Now, if the Niners didn't like him, I think somebody would come up to 11 and trade. That's what I'm talking about. If Graham falls to 11, I'd take him. If the Niners don't love him, then trade back and get a couple of spots. Yeah. That's the kind of thing that you can, like John Lynch is saying, we can't trade back. Well, if Mason Graham's there and you don't like him, you can trade back. If Tyler Warren's there, especially the year after Brock Bowers breaks out with the Raiders and the Colts or somebody like that, or somebody we haven't heard of, loves the guy, then you could trade back. It's just, quarterbacks do that. I don't think there's a quarterback to trade up for, but there will be a possibility of certain players are on the board.
I think so too. And you never know. Everybody plays the cards close to the vest. A lot of teams don't like to propose trades beforehand because they don't want people shopping their trades.
Yep. Good point.
So a lot of times the trade that you get on the clock is the best offer you get. M Squared says, I'm surprised people say how Kenneth Grant's stock is high due to Mason Graham. Well, because Mason, I would say, they were a great pairing, right? One guy's a two-gapper in Grant, who's very, very strong naturally. And the other guy's a leverage player who's super hyperactive and everywhere. I mean, there's no question that Mason Graham is a better player than Kenneth Grant right now. The question is, Kenneth Grant's 6'3", 330 and fast, and that could be really impressive in a couple of years as he learns the position. M Squared says, who benefited more from college help, Cleveland Farrell or Trayvon Walker? I would take Farrell. Cleve Farrell played on that line with everybody. He had everybody on that line. Didn't he have like 4 or 5 other good players there?
Oh, yeah.
They were great.
They had Dexter Lawrence on that defensive line. They had the dude
Christian Wilkins.
The Wilkins was on that line. I mean, that was
KJ Henry. They had a bunch of dudes.
Everybody knew. I mean, the Raiders, what Mike Mayock did there,
terrible.
Where they were talking so much about character, and we got to get character guys. We got to change the culture. I mean, I understand that.
You got to get athletes,
but you got to get players who can play. Like Cleve Farrell, everybody knew that year. It was like they took him at 4, and it was like he's okay. Like he might be a first round pick, but it was like nobody had him at 5. And then Raiders put so much emphasis on trying to change the culture when he came in. Mike Mayock was like culture, and it's like, dude, but not at the expense of the football player. And that was just a weird, that whole thing. This is a
really interesting super chat though, because in some ways you could argue that Mason Graham is the Cleveland Farrell of defensive tackles, and that Trayvon Walker and Shamar Stewart is a Trayvon Walker type defensive end. Trayvon Walker, another guy, big, strong, fast, not a lot of production. Farrell had good production, but limited upside. And like, who would you rather have right now? Well, I'd much rather have Trayvon Walker today than Cleveland Farrell. So on that note, should I say that I'd much rather have Shamar Stewart than Mason Graham? It's hard to say.
I think Graham's a lot better. I mean, they're different positions, but I think Mason Graham is a really good player.
I do too. 6-minute abs. First 6 games of the college season, Milroe was projected number 1. Once teams figured out Bama has no skill position players, they stacked the box and spied him. That still doesn't explain why he looks so bad in Mobile. NBA
Ryan Williams, their wide receiver, who's going to be a first round pick, wasn't anything.
Yeah, and they had some. Come on,
they had their freshman wide receiver was awesome.
Well, and now the year before he had Isaiah Bond. NBA says, who would be a terrible 49er first round pick? I would think I don't like Mikael Williams, and here's why: because I think he didn't play a lot. He was a 5-star guy. He hurt his ankle last year before the first game. He then used it as an excuse. He's still using it as an excuse. The other day, he got outplayed by Jalen Walker in a workout so dramatically, and he's still saying that his ankle isn't right. So either you're not a quick healer but then the production's not there. The workout I thought was just okay. To me, where you really the places where you find bust a lot are highly ranked Bama, Georgia, LSU, Ohio State players, because they have high ranked players every year, and some of those years those guys aren't good. And so to me, he makes me nervous. Mikael Williams makes me nervous that he's going to be solid, but nothing more. And the Niners really, more than anything, don't need a solid anything. They need a great player at whatever spot. So that's how I feel.
Yeah, I would agree. And, just if I'm them, and this is, it almost is easier this way. Now they're at 11, which makes it easier too. But I also think that they have so many needs, and people can say they're drafting for need. Well, if they're drafting for need, Tennessee, I mean, if you're drafting best player, Tennessee, it's not Cam Ward. I mean, they combine both of them together. That's just what they do. You're not just drafting best player. That's a great philosophy. And I'll say it again. That's why the rounds after the first, you start to get better players, because as the draft goes on, you draft less for need and more for just best player available. In the first round, you're like, God, we got to get a starter right away at this position. If you have a glaring need, that's what the Niners did with Kinlaw. Kinlaw was not the best player. Tristan Wirfs was sitting there, and they traded back a pick and allowed Tampa to get him. They didn't draft the best player. They had just traded Buckner to the Colts, and they were desperate to get a defensive tackle. So that's, they drafted for need. Clearly, he wasn't the best player. He was a monster. He hadn't produced it at South Carolina the way that he could have, but he was 6'6" and 330, and he had these long vines, and you're like, oh my God, this guy's going to be a monster. And it turned out that he didn't understand leverage and couldn't play the game, and whatever. Who just gave him $7 million, by the way? Somebody just gave him a bunch of money. Kinlaw. I was like, what? Oh, there was it Adam Peters in Washington? Is that who did it? Somebody.
Yes,
he did. They just gave Kinlaw a ridiculous contract. I think it was Peters, because he's still convinced, because he was with the Niners. He's still damn convinced that he's going to be a player, and it's like, dude, he's not going to be a player. But the Niners that year had just traded Buckner, and they went, oh my God, we got to get a defensive tackle. You can't tell me that they didn't think Wirfs was a better player than they but they were so desperate for a defensive tackle. That's what they did.
Yep.
You got to be careful.
You really do. If you draft for need, there's always a chance, that you're just going to reach, because you're limiting the pool so greatly that you're kind of watering the whole thing down. 6 Minute Abs says Milroe had 3 bad games. Check the tape.
Spend enough money.
Michigan, he says, versus Michigan, he was a stud. Okay. Spend enough money. 6 Minute Abs.
Look, I love that you have conviction. And if they were doing
I love it too. It's awesome.
That thing that John said, you would be that scout and you'd jump up on the table and you'd be pounding it for Jalen Milroe. We'll find out. I mean, we'll find out what he is. For me, if Jalen Milroe was on the board, and I'm not talking about specifically for the Niners, in like the 4th round, that's about where he should be picked. There are certain guys who risk versus reward, but you know what's going to happen? And I think 6 Minute Abs is going to be right in this respect, that someone's going to take a flyer on him in like the 2nd round because he's an incredible athlete, and they're going to think that they can teach him to throw the ball, because right now he's not a good enough thrower of the football. And we know that at some point in your career, you have to be able to win from the pocket. And right now, he cannot consistently enough. I'm not here to say he's not a great athlete and doesn't have a lot of upside, but I don't take that in the first couple of rounds. I can't, but someone might.
I'll say this: if Anthony Richardson went super high and he's very, very raw, that maybe this guy will go really high. The 4.3 speed is unbelievable. That is a game breaker. There's no question. But then how much development is needed to play quarterback at a high level?
Justin Fields is on his 3rd team now. And after he fails with the Jets this year, he's going to be in his 4th team, because he's a guy he's an amazing runner, but he's not an amazing thrower. And
he doesn't see it. He doesn't throw with any anticipation.
He doesn't see it. He's Colin Kaepernick, but he's a better runner than Kaepernick was. But he just doesn't see it. And you either can at some point or you can't. I mean, to me, he's at the point of his career where it's like, are you ever going to see it? And it just doesn't seem like he's going to. And the Jets are the Jets. They're going to find it out, because he's going to run around, he's going to make some plays, and he's going to be on Sports Center. But then, it's going to come down to it, and he's not going to be able to. I mean, look, he couldn't beat out Russell Wilson last year. Russell Wilson stunk for a lot of the year last year. They couldn't move that offense at all. And Justin Fields got the job, got hurt, couldn't get it back. I mean, that tells you a lot.
They were 4-2, and yet I had watched a couple of their games, and I knew they were pulling him. You know what I mean? It was like, and people were shocked at that point. I'm like, dude, have you watched Pittsburgh? They get to the red zone,
no passing,
and he has absolutely no idea what he's doing, and they settle for field goals.
Tighten windows.
They went to Russell, and you notice nobody complained. Nobody complained, and as you said, Russell wasn't great. Fuji Simeon says no bottom of the pint on Friday. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. We got the draft going. We could have things. We'll have an announcement. Fuji Simeon says, Larry and John, the only acceptable Star Wars action figure at any age is Boba Fett.
Yeah, Boba Fett.
Oh, that's good.
I'll take your word for it.
Boxing fan.
Even when they were really popular, I didn't play with them. They weren't my thing.
It was a great movie.
Cool.
Came out. I was 7. It was 1977. I remember going. Now there's been a few others, and I'm 55. Boxing fan times 4. A player you would trade back in the first 4.
That's a good question.
I'll give you one. I really love Jalen Noel. The idea of matching him up. But I'm a big fan of this defense, getting in this defensive line bolstered. And if Kenneth Grant was there at the end of the first round, especially if I get Mason Graham, like if I get Mason Graham, the Niners need a combo inside, duo. Why not draft a duo that's actually played together, and you like them both, and they fit together? I think Graham and Grant would fit together nicely. And if I got Graham, luckily to fall to me at 11. Yeah, I don't think I would trade up, because I don't think I'm more likely to trade back and get more picks, because I believe in picking more guys. But if Grant were there at the very end of the first round, I think I would.
I wonder why he's fallen, because when this process was long, but when he was at his height of this process, Grant, there were Dexter Lawrence comparisons. Now you get Dexter Lawrence, that's changing your defensive line, because he's unblockable for the Giants. And at his size, he can get 10 sacks inside. He can stuff the run at the same time. I'm not saying Grant's going to be that, but at points in this process, there were a lot of people, and Daniel Jeremiah was one of them, who were like, look, this dude has a ton of upside. So he might be a value pick, because it looks to me like in a lot of these projected deals that he's going to go like in the second round. That's the type of guy where you're like, how the hell did that guy fall to the second round? But he's not always consistent. Like you said, the thing about Mason Graham is maybe he doesn't have the upside, whatever, but he's going to give you effort, technique, all these kind of things every single play. Grant, it might be 1 out of 3, but maybe it's 3rd and 2 and he stuffs the run and turns the game around. But I'd love to have that guy, but it seems to me that now he's going to fall to the second round, and that'd be a hell of a get for somebody, I think.
Do the Niners take a local guy so here are the local guys. Alec Ayamanor from Stanford, probably going, they're saying rounds 2 through 4. I think he might be there later than that. Noel Williams,
I like him
from Cal. And then there's
in the right round, he'd be a nice pick.
I love Noel. Craig Woodson, the safety from Cal, round 4 to 6. Noel, they say rounds 3 and 4. Yeah. Nick Nash, San Jose State, rounds 5, 6, or 7.
Not super fast, but yeah, he's not bad.
Teddy Buchanan.
I like Buchanan. He's again late
5,
rounder
6,
kind
7.
of a guy. Yeah, that wouldn't be bad.
Yeah, I'm going to give you a sleeper local guy that I saw at the local pro day. He went to Freedom High School in Antioch, so he went to the Niner local pro day. He's a slot receiver. He's 5'9", about 190 pounds, but he's really electric. And he played for UW Huskies. His name's Giles Jackson, and he is good. I mean, this guy's legitimately excellent slot receiver, super quick, but explosive. 4.3 speed, like a legit 4.3 guy. And then I looked him up. He in the bowl game, he had 160 yards and a touchdown. He was great in the Apple Cup. So remember that name, Giles Jackson. It's a good name too.
It is a good name. Giles Jackson on that stage. Very good.
Giles Jackson. Everybody.
I'm ready for this thing, man. I'm excited. The draft is honestly, and I know you love it too. It's one of my favorite times of the year, and a lot of people think all this is kind of dorky and all this kind of stuff. I think the drama of it and who's going to trade down and who's telling the truth and who's not and where guys going and you're mad that guy went there and all this because you love a guy right pre-draft and all of a sudden he goes to the Seahawks, right? And you got to hate the guy. And I this lying game that the GMs are putting together, and the whole thing intrigues me from start to finish. I think it's awesome. By like late Saturday, I know this is when you start loving it, but like it can get old like 6th, 7th round, but first few rounds of the draft, I just can't get enough of it.
It's the best.
I love it.
Last Super M squared. How about Fisk instead of Breeze? That's it for spending. LOL.
Yeah, that ain't bad. Braden Fisk, the guy from the Rams.
Thanks to Pig and a Pickle. Thanks to Sharp Corner Sports Cards and Collectibles. Thanks to our good friends at Claudaddy Arcades and Upskill LearnKey Upskill Academy. The links are in the description below. This is the final day to sign up for the NFL Draft Contest brought to you by LearnKey. All you got to do is pick the first 12 picks in the draft. Whoever gets the most right gets a $100 Visa gift card. Second place gets a $50 Visa gift card. The link's in the description below. That's going to do it for us. Thanks to John. Thanks to all of you. Thanks to M Squared for the last Super. Have a great rest of your day. Peace. Thanks for supporting the Krug Show. And John Lund Unleashed.
Yeah, never met a man I've been scared of. Careful, you gon' get